Welcome, traveler of time. Here, on this channel, we bring the ancient world back to life through gentle storytelling, detailed history, and journeys across civilizations that shaped humanity. If you enjoy calming stories of the past and want to keep exploring with us night after night, don't forget to subscribe. Your support helps us continue to wander through history together. So, find a quiet place, let your mind rest, and allow the voices of history to guide you. Tonight, we open another chapter from the ancient world. Think of tonight as a slow journey through time's most reliable corridors, those long straight intentions the Romans left across valleys and hills. Congratulations, you've just woken up in the year 1325. We're going to travel the Roman network not as tourists, but as wayfarers who must actually get somewhere, and learn how people found their way when the map was mostly in their heads. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, your feet are on a pale stony ribbon that knows more about Europe than most kings. The morning is a cool breath. Larks are drawing thin threads of sound above the fields. A mule's bell ticks like a patient clock. The road ahead seems to choose you before you choose it. If you were hoping for a carriage to materialize, it won't, unless your patron saint is named Coin. The air holds a faint after-scent of wet limestone and crushed time. Dew beads the leather of your boots, and the hedges whisper as if they've kept travelers' secrets for centuries. A little way off, an oven crackles in a village bakery. The heat presses gently against the dawn like a cat pushing at a window. Your satchel is tolerable, your water gourd full, and your expectations just light enough to carry. You'll be grateful for that last one in about 5 miles, when your shoulders begin writing you polite complaints. This is Italy, but it could be Gaul, Britannia, Hispania, 100 years after 100 ages. The Romans paved to project power, yes, but they also paved to solve an argument with geography, how to move men, messages, and market goods predictably. The stones under you are a survival of that argument, and their answer is still persuasive. Smooth, cambered, drainable, and aligned by an invisible geometry, the road lifts slightly at the center so rain runs off and carts don't wallow. It's quiet now, except for the far blink of a sheep bell and the hush of the wind over wheat. You can almost hear the old surveyors breathing, measuring lines with a groma, 2 crossed arms with dangling plumb lines, a simple instrument that made extravagant promises. You're heading south along a stretch that once spoke the language of the Via Cassia, though the name has weathered. Every few thousand paces a cylindrical milestone stands half-sunk in the verge, likened like a thoughtful old man. Its carved letters are softened but legible if you lean close. Abbreviations for an emperor's pride, the distance to a city, the maintenance promised by a magistrate. The Latin is economical. It has no time to flatter you. It says, MPX, 10 miles to somewhere that matters. In this century, the stones double as moral support. The road is an advisor who doesn't raise its voice. Your modern sense of direction, fed on blue dots, is sulking quietly in the background. The craft of navigation here is not one trick, but several braided together. You begin with the lay of the land, river on your left, long ridge on your right. The sun climbing where you expect it to, wind habitually from the sea by afternoon. The Romans reinforced this with infrastructure that was legible, straightness where possible, curves where necessary. Bridges that declare themselves as crossings and not awkward negotiations. On a day like this, the masonry bridge over the stream ahead is a lesson in modest intention. A single arch, unshowy, with cutwaters that part the current like polite hands. As you step onto it, the damp stone lifts a clean smell, and a kingfisher needles downstream, flashing, then gone. The only loud thing here is your imagination trying to make a chart out of sky. What else would a traveler carry? Not a paper atlas. Those belong to scholars' cupboards. Instead, you might tuck an itinerarium into your pouch. Columns of place names with numbers between them, a list of from here to there, that turns the world into distances. It's not a picture map. It's a promise that the road links the syllables as surely as a thread links beads. The great Tabula Peutingeriana, a medieval copy of a Roman route map, exists somewhere far from your hands, rolled like a secret. It stretches the world as if along a string, cities flaring like lanterns beside the lines. You don't see it tonight, but you travel as if you had. Nearby, a mantio once stood, an official way station of the cursus publicus, the imperial post. In 1325 it is a shabby inn with surprising ambitions, a stable that still smells warm from midnight, a yard swept with a broom of twig, a host who knows which ruts lead to which towns. You hear the soft tread of hooves and the musical jangle of tackle as someone leads out a pack animal. A sleepy voice offers thin wine and thicker advice. Keep to the raised crown of the road where stones are tight. Avoid the left verge after rain. If you pass the ruined watchtower before noon, you've made good time. You nod, as if your feet weren't already lobbying for a different hobby. 2 calm breaths help. In through the nose, slow, feel the coolness. Out through the mouth, slower, as if fogging a window. The roadside smells gentler than it looks. Fennel, pennyroyal, damp clay. A cart approaches, tires iron-banded and tuneful, the driver humming a tune that could have been learned from his grandfather's grandfather. He clucks, you step aside. The mule snorts steam and gives you a look which, frankly, suggests you're new at this. You are new at this. But the road is patient, and patience has a sound. The light hiss of wind through barley, a skylark spiraling its tiny hymn, the soft percussion of your steps measuring out the morning. Look closely at the surface underfoot. Not a mosaic, but layers, statumen, heavy stones, rudis, rubble bound with lime, nucleus, finer concrete, and the final summum dorsum of fitted blocks. The technique varied with local materials, but the idea remained. Make a controlled, draining sandwich out of the earth. That control becomes navigation by another name. Where the road holds its crown and the ditches are kept clear, you read a message. This way is maintained. Therefore, this way is used. Therefore, this way goes somewhere that still matters. A neglected section, grass-hushed and puddled, tells the opposite story. The Romans rode in stone. The Middle Ages are writing in weeds. You pass a milestone whose inscription still mutters, "Rest, Itvit," restored, along with a carved hand pointing slightly left. The hand is not for you alone, it's for centuries. A narrow branch peels off towards a town whose bell you can just hear if you pause and tilt your head. There, one clear note, then another, falling across the fields like drops of copper. Distant bell, the sound sets the pace of your thoughts. You choose the main road, because the day promises long, and because the logic of a trunk route is a kindness. Fewer surprises, more reassurance. Besides, surprises are for stories told by firelight. The road is a story that prefers to be obvious. Wayfinding is also social. A goat herd tells you the ford ahead is shallow today, and the nod he gives the sky explains the condition without words. A peddler, straps creaking, recites a string of place names like prayer beads and adds the wisdom that the second bridge after the willow copse was rebuilt last spring. Information moves here as fast as feet and wheels will carry it, and then it lingers in kitchens and courtyards, edited by memory and the taste of wine. Navigation is gossip with consequences. You keep an ear open for the ordinary poetry of directions. Follow the stones to where they stop arguing with the hill, then turn where the cypresses begin counting. Somehow that always works. By midday, the camber of the road has kept your soles dry despite a night's drizzle. The verges are alive with insects stitching sound into the heat. The smell shifts from thyme to warm dust and crushed fig leaf. Night insects, faint. A ruined Roman culvert shows itself in a low cut, its stones dark with moisture. A trickle glints, then hides. You drink, then walk slow, then slower. Navigation becomes rhythm, a measured count of steps between markers, a glance to confirm the sun's climb, a decision to pause where shade is honest. If you're wondering whether to pretend your way into a knight's saddle, that's very imaginative and entirely beyond tonight's budget. We should say aloud the part most guidebooks leave quiet. The road isn't only an engineering feat, it's a behavioral script. It tells carts to keep left or right by the angle of the ruts. It coaxes speed or caution by its width. It encourages strangers to become temporary companions because the safety of the line is communal. Even milestones are small tutors in patience. Nothing screams, it all increments. The Romans didn't design a path, they designed a habit. In 1325, that habit still holds even where empires don't. You're not following stones. You're consenting to an old idea about how the world should join up. A last sensory pause. Shade gathers under plane trees, leaf light flickering like water on a ceiling. The road hums with distant life. A bee crosses your path as if late for an appointment, and somewhere behind a stone wall an oven settles with a contented sigh. Oven crackle. Your shoulders ache in a tidy line from neck to strap, but the ache feels earned, like handwriting after a long letter. Ahead, the verge widens near a crossroads. A broken plinth bears a scratched cross on its Roman face, old and new resting cheek by cheek. You adjust your pace, and the day agrees. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Tonight's value is simple. Learn how a line becomes a road, how surveyors persuaded hills, bogs, and human stubbornness to line up. Congratulations, you've just woken up at first light in a field outside a small Latin town in the year 1325, where old Roman habits are still the cleverest tools on site. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, your teachers are mensors, the men who find straightness with string and patience. They've set a wooden tripod in the dew, their cloaks folded neatly on a stone, and a boy is warming his hands over a brazier as if numbers had a temperature. The field is pale with mist, larks stir, a light river smell drifts in from beyond the hedges. Sparrow chatter. The instrument in their hands looks unimpressive. A groma, a vertical staff topped by a cross with 4 arms, each arm with a plumb line. No glass, no brass clockwork, nothing to flash in the sun. But when they align 2 opposite strings with distant staves set by assistants, they create a straight axis that doesn't care about your personal feelings. It's a stern instrument, politely so. You step where they tell you. You hold a sighting pole. You wait until a call. Tenio. Hole. Locks you into a geometry old enough to have opinions. A faint breeze may sway a plumb line, so the chief surveyor watches for the exact stillness between 2 wavering moments. The tiny interval where the world agrees with itself. This is the first secret of navigation on Roman roads. Straightness isn't an obsession, it's a language. A straight line through mixed country saves time, simplifies maintenance, and makes direction obvious to travelers who will never meet the original surveyor. The line is not just efficient, it is readable. You could be half asleep and still know where to put your feet next. That's merciful design. The mensors have a rhythm. 2 assistants carry tall white rods, staves, and plant them, one after another, along the chosen bearing. A third walks the offset, counting paces in a soft monotone. The chief stands at the groma, eyes level with the cross, asking the horizon to behave. When you hold the forward staff, you hear instructions reduced to poetry. Right a finger, left a thumb. Good. Fix. The words are small, the effect is continental. A distant bell rings from the town and smudges the silence with bronze. Distant bell? You'd think a hill would bully such a fragile language. It doesn't. The Romans allowed gentle deflections where the earth insisted, but they preferred to deal with a hill honestly. Climb it on the bias or cut into it, then set a straight alignment beyond. Intervisibility worked like a handshake between points. To keep the climb civil, they'd choose a line that balanced effort and drainage, laying the road on an adger, a raised embankment, when the ground went sulky after rain. The result is navigable clarity. Even when the road must bend, it bends as if it means to be straight again soon. Not all lines are horizontal, of course. Where water is concerned, the surveyors bring out the chorobates, a long wooden bench with notches and a central channel. Fill the channel with water and the surface becomes your level. No argument. The bench's legs stand on packed soil. The little plug pops. A thread of water settles. And everyone inhales as if leveling were a delicate prayer. A short snarky thought tries to rise. You're checking a ditch with a big plank, but the accuracy keeps it polite. This is quiet cleverness, not carnival showmanship. Once the main axis is fixed, the mensors lay out limites, secondary lines that define width, ditches, and verges. Pegs go in, string goes taut. A scribe scratches symbols on a wax tablet. Later, a stonecutter will transfer these notes to a marker, perhaps a sip is sunk at a junction, so that even if string rots, the plan doesn't. In a century where most people measure with body parts, paces, cubits, handspans, the road institutionalizes memory into stone. That matters to anyone who walks by starlight and needs the line to behave like daylight. By mid-morning, the mist lifts. Heat finds your shoulders. Time rises in the air when someone's heel scuffs the turf. The surveyors review the day's necessities. A culvert here where the soil darkens and grass fattens. A slight crown down the center to shed water. Side ditches deep enough to discourage puddles, but not so proud they collapse. They talk in practical couplets. Water down. Wheels up. Ditch wide. Verge kind. You could fall asleep face down in the recipe and wake on a usable road. A footpath nearby tells a different story. It curves where conversation once wandered. It widens and narrows according to gossip. It remembers livestock more than intention. The Roman line does not forbid that, but it edits it. Future travelers will choose the edited version because it is quieter to think along. The path is a mood. The road is a decision. If that sounds severe, rest your ear against the old stones later. They purr with traffic that solved 1,000 little worries before breakfast. Navigation, then, begins before the first cart rolls. It begins with the act of making a path legible at a glance. When you see a straightened horizon between two copses, you're not just seeing engineering. You're reading a promise. Keep this bearing and you will find a bridge, a market, a bed, a bell. Because the road says so, and roads usually keep their promises. That's why milestones stand like tutors along the way. Place one every Roman mile, about 1,000 paces, and the body learns the distance at the same time as the mind. Stone and muscle conspire to make direction feel obvious. A gentle lunch follows. Bread that remembers an oven, olives glossy as thought, a pull at a leather flask that tastes faintly of resin. The mensors sit in the shade of a willow and argue amiably about whether the dioptra, a more sophisticated sighting instrument with sights and screws, is worth the trouble for small works. One says yes, one says no, all agree that rain ruins everything. You are invited to hold the groma again, and you feel, for a moment, the exact stillness of the plum. The world aligns, and you align with it. Stream hush. In the afternoon, they walk you to a place where the line must cross a marshy vein. There, the lesson is about choosing straightness wisely. They'll build a corduroy of logs first, then a compacted base, then the road proper, and they'll keep the crown high so the water minds its lane. If the marsh sulks, the line rises on a causeway. Straight when it serves, sensible when it doesn't. This is not stubbornness, it's judgment with a measuring stick. As the light mellows, the chief surveyor shares a last fragment of craft. How to set waysight points that travelers will notice without thinking. An isolated cypress, a pale boulder on a rise, a chapel with lime-washed walls, each placed or chosen so that even a drowsy muleteer can string them like beads. The road becomes a necklace of quiet beacons. You can follow with half a mind and still arrive with all your belongings. That's very Roman and very kind. 2 breaths, slow as the fall of dust in a sunbeam. In the scent of straw and warm wood. Out, a thin sweetness of crushed mint underfoot. Somewhere, a baker draws a loaf and the crust gives a shy crack. Oven crackle. The surveyors pack the groma carefully, wrap the cords, and knot them so tomorrow's hand remembers today's geometry. The boy kicks earth over the brazier. The field darkens by a shade you only notice when someone speaks. Same hour, says the chief. Everyone nods. A tiny laugh is allowed. The entire operation hinged on 4 strings, a stick, and people who could stand still. No marble, no thunder. But that's the point. The quiet tools of straightness are cheap to carry and dear to forget. Lose them and the world frays. Use them, and even a tired traveler feels guided. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. The evening folds over the fields. Insects begin their patient stitching of sound at the verge, and the first star winks in, pretending to be surprised by its own punctuality. Night insects. You turn onto the half-made line. Even as packed earth, it already behaves like a road. The day's lesson is under your soles. Navigation starts with intention, is sustained by small instruments. and ends as something you can feel in your bones, straightness as comfort. Tonight's value is practical. How a Roman road teaches you to read a town, gate, grid, water, bread, a bed, without asking a soul. Congratulations, you've just woken up at the blue edge of dusk in the year 1325, a mile from a hill town whose bones are Roman and whose breath is medieval. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the road pulls you towards stonework that still behaves like a rulebook. The evening light is honey-colored, softening ruts into lines of ink. Swallows scribble low above the ditch. A bell in the town feels for the hour and finds it. Distant bell, time and warm dust rise together. The air cools along the stream and carries a faint sweetness of wood smoke from baking. From a distance, the gate explains almost everything. Roman gates were actors who learned to project, arches fra. As saying this is the way most people have gone and come back alive. Even in 1325, with battlements added and niches converted to saints, the old logic remains. The approach is straight, the ditch drains away from the threshold. The paving tightens its fit, as if dressing up to enter polite company. A torch gutters on the wall walk. Somewhere beyond, the soft hiss of a fountain practices being a landmark. Fountain trickle. If you want sarcasm, here is a thimble, your navigation app. Tonight is a stone arch that's been working offline for a millennium. It doesn't need charging, it charges you with behaving. Step through and you become part of a flow designed to be legible to strangers. That's the point. The Romans didn't just pave, they choreographed. Inside the gate, your soles recognize a shift. The paving stones are squarer, their joints truer. The crown of the road relaxes slightly because the drain now has grates at intervals. Curbs define the pedestrian margin. Stepping stones cross at regular points, tall enough to keep sandals dry in rain, yet spaced to match a cart's wheel gauge. Clever courtesy in 3 lumps of rock. A shopfront spills lantern light onto the stones. A baker draws a peel from the oven, and the crust cracks delicately, like someone trying not to wake a child. Oven crackle, warm bread, and cool stone. 2 notes that say, you're in the right place, and it will look after you. The grid asserts itself without fuss. Cardo north, south, decumanus east, west. You don't need a lecture. You can feel the axes under your feet because lines of sight keep resolving into straight prospects. Look down the Cardo, and the town tilts its chin. Colonnade, cistern cover, a square where the light widens. Look along the decumanus and find commerce. Taberni with counters polished by elbows, hooks for shutters, faded sketches of grapes, and loaves on plaster. Even where medieval alleys have nibbled at the orthodoxy, the main alignments still behave like rails for the eyes. You could walk half dreaming and still find the center. Sound helps the map into your head. Children thrum like sparrows near a well, each laugh bouncing off stucco. A donkey's hoof rings once on a loose iron strap, and then the noise is swallowed by cloth and air. The bell you heard outside calls again. Closer now. Its notes softening as roofs intervene. Distant bell. If you've ever followed a pub sing-song to reach a street you couldn't name, you already know this method. Sound makes lanes into arrows. Water marks the network with confidence. A modest fountain stands at a side piazza where 2 lanes meet. Its basin edges are worn to satin. The aqueduct that fed it is a survivor in parts, now supplemented by wells. But hydraulics shaped this plan and still whisper its rules. Fountains sit at the junctions like punctuation. The comma where you pause, the colon before something important. The map in your head begins filling with liquid anchors. Drink here, turn there, wash travel from your hands before the meal. A snark the size of a fig. No one is going to hand you a laminated leaflet. They expect you to have eyes, nostrils, and a willingness to notice where people are in a hurry to go. Fortunately, that's how Roman towns were meant to be used. Follow feet, follow smells, follow light. Here is the forum, or what remains of it under a new market square. Stalls cluster where the paving is flattest. A church shouldering the old basilica line keeps the long rectangles proportion. Even if you've never seen a plan, your body reads the openness as centrality. Bread sellers face inward. Olive oil merchants line a sunnier edge. A scribe takes dictation by a pillar base that once listened to Senate gossip. The square organizes your choices. Government to one side, grain to another, lodgings within a minute's drift, because no one wants to carry sleep very far. Wayfinding signage, medieval and Roman, divides the labor. Painted notices, the ghosts of titular Picti, still cling to plaster. Arrows, names, the ancient equivalent of this way for the baths, now half overwritten by a tavern's promise of hot stew. Stone markers at corners bear crosses cut over earlier marks. A sip is sunken near the well carries a number so abraded it feels like counting with your thumb. You don't need to read Latin to understand the choreography. The town presents decisions one at a time, with options that make sense to a hungry, tired, mildly lost human. You try a side street and immediately notice how the gradient is managed. The camber tips toward a gully that whispers, not gurgles. The curb dips where carts enter a courtyard. The stones at a tight bend are laid on the bias for grip. These details are micro-compass points. When you feel the slope draw you, you can guess where water will go and where people will step on rainy days. Follow water to find low streets with warehouses. Follow the breeze to higher ground where the good rooms sleep. It's navigation by comfort. Evening thickens. Lanterns string a soft constellation along the cardo, each shopkeeper hanging light like a promise. The smells catalog the hour without boasting. Rosemary and steam, a pan hissing faintly, leather warmed by hands, damp wool near a doorway. The town exhales and expects you to fall into its rhythm. If your modern appetite for spectacle is still peering round corners, it will have to settle for a very practical beauty. Lines that lead, stones that remember, and the unfussy miracle of everywhere being exactly where it ought to be. Where do you find a bed? Listen for it. The Mancio of imperial days has long since become a public inn, but it hasn't forgotten its script. It sits near the gate or at the meeting of main streets, within easy reach of water and fodder. The yard opens inward so animals can be untacked without blocking the way. A trough stands where a cart can pull alongside. A lintel bears the inn sign, sometimes a carved sprig, sometimes a painted patron saint commandeering an older emblem. The host has the necessary superpower, knowing which direction every stranger will claim they meant to go tomorrow. He gestures to a corner table and assures you the stew will be ready presently, which in road time means shortly after you've ceased to mind. 2 slow breaths. In faint yeast and the cool breath of stone. Out, a thread of wood smoke and crushed mint. Night insects, just beyond the walls. Somewhere a door thumps gently on its leather strap and settles. Somewhere else a floorboard answers like an old friend. The town, like the road that fed it, has been edited for legibility. Edges softened by habit until even the unfamiliar sits lightly in the hand. A tiny, useful bit of cheek. If you try to stride straight through at speed, you will earn your blisters and miss your supper. The design is not for sprinting, it's for arriving in good order. You navigate best here by obeying small kindnesses. Step where the stones are tight. Pause where the light widens. Drink before you ask before you fret. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. As the hour tips fully into night, the bell sounds again, cushioned now by tiled roofs and warm air. Distant bell, a cat pads the curb as if it owns the concept of curbs. The road you walked has dissolved into streets, and the streets into rooms, and the rooms into sleep. The map you carry now is not a picture but a sequence of comforts. Arch, lantern, fountain, square, bread, bed. Tonight's value is timing, how roads became timetables. Horses, warrants, and way stations turning distance into something you could plan for. Congratulations, you've just woken before dawn in the year 1325 with a courier's satchel and an inconvenient sense of responsibility. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, it's you, a hired mare with opinions, and a road that thinks in stages. The air is slate blue and cold enough to tidy your posture. Breath plumes from the stable door like a small ghost. A sleepy ostler buckles tack with the gravity of a priest. Leather creaks, a hoof rings once on stone. Oats smell faintly warm, as if breakfast had learned manners. Roman habit still frames the morning. The cursus publicus, the old imperial post, has faded into a medieval patchwork, but its logic survives in bones. Mutations for fresh mounts, mansions for food and sleep, a string of expected distances you can feel in your thighs. Officials once carried diplomata, stamped warrants that opened stables and silenced questions. In 1325 your token is more local. A guild wooden tally cut with a sign, a clerk's letter, a nod from the reeve, but the performance is recognizably Roman. Arrive, present authority, exchange hooves for speed. It's navigation by entitlement, politely exercised. You start at a trot. The road mediates your promise to arrive by noon with salt and wax realism. Milestones still keep a kind of score. Even where they've toppled, locals have their own counters. Crosses on wayside stones, a cypress where a Roman cippus once stood, the stump of an old boundary marker with a crude hand pointing down valley. The mare reads the crown of the surface better than you do, choosing the tight joints of the summum dorsum over the shifty verge. The first birds tear thin lines of sound across the fields. Sparrow thread. Why does the post teach navigation? Because it imposes time onto space. A normal walker thinks in from here to there. A courier thinks this many miles before the next oat bag, that many before the bell. Town bells, newer replacements for Roman water clocks and sundials, carve the morning into audible waypoints. When the first low note carries from behind, your pace settles. Distant bell, when the second finds you ahead, you know you're banking minutes for hills later. Inside the satchel, wax tablets, a reed pen, a little file of ink, folded letters tied with thread, and a scrap list of stage notes. Willow Bridge, low. Outcrop chalky. Ask at the red door if the ford pouts. The list isn't a map, it's a schedule. The old postmasters would nod. Roman itineraria gave distances. Couriers turned those numbers into horses, and horses into hope. You keep your eyes on the crown, because puddles steal time and kindness. A small, merciful snark. If you imagine cinematic gallops from city to city, your backside is writing a stern rebuttal. Couriers live between trot and canter, with reality breaks for water and paperwork. The road prefers rhythm to heroics. That rhythm is a navigational aid. Step counts, hoof counts, bell counts, so your mind can drift without losing the day's arithmetic. First relay. A low yard behind a gate where the lintel's Roman stone has been filed into a saint. The stable smells of hay, damp horse, and honest labor. A boy brings a fresh mount while the ostler runs an eye over your token. The exchange is pure choreography. Unbuckle, lift, pass, buckle, test, nod. A woman at the doorway hands you a cup of something hot that tastes faintly of rosemary and agreement. A tablet on the counter bears tally marks. Who came through, when, and how cross their horse looked. You scratch your time. The mark joins a thin column of travel-shaped numbers. Back onto the road, you notice the micro-signals of a courier's route. Verges cut clean where horses step off. A culvert widened for cart hubs. A stepping stone replaced recently with a flatter face to stop stumbles. These are tiny comforts, but they add up to trust. You can predict your next hour because unknown hands have tidied it for you. The Romans taught that habit. The century keeps practicing. The landscape itself lends timing cues. Where the line climbs a south-facing slope, the wind drops, and the smell of warm time climbs early. You shorten rain and sit the rise. On the north side, frost lingers in shade. The mare's breath turns silver, and her hoof sound goes hollow on a buried culvert. You count from the ruined watchtower to the willow copse. 240 hoof strides today, which means the ground is drier than last month. The road is a ledger. Your body is the pen. Now a little history folded into pace. The Roman average for mounted post, 40 to 60 miles a day with relays, was achieved by engineering, rules, and fuss. Wheels within a standard gauge, schedules nailed to wood, penalties for delay. In the Middle Ages, the monopoly loosens. Monasteries run their own messengers. Merchant leagues run packet riders. Cities hire bellmen. Yet the stages remain Roman in temperament. Distances clustered around fodder, water, and repair. That means a traveler can still navigate by frequency. When you begin hearing more hammer on iron than lark, a forge is near. When you smell dung in a tidy line, a relay yard is imminent. When you pass 2 milestones with improved ditching, funds have recently met attention and you're approaching jurisdiction that cares. A dawn oven somewhere cracks its crust with shy pride. Oven crackle, a dog barks twice and reconsiders its philosophy. The mayor's ears flick to every sound, and then back to the road's long sentence. You pass a bridge that still holds its Roman springing stones. A cutwater lifts the stream in 2 sheets around a blunt triangle. Bridges are time machines with handrails. You cross and feel the schedule smile. Second relay. This one busier, because a market town leans against the decumanus a mile ahead. A chalkboard lists rates for common errands. Parcel to the abbey, note to the mill, summons to the reef. A clerk with ink on 3 fingers inspects your token and sets out a little lead seal stamped with the town's mark. He hangs it on your satchel string with the bored grace of a man who ties time to people for a living. You swap mounts again. Your thighs complain in fluent prose. You file their essay under later. Navigation by time has its tricks. If cloud flattens the light, you count hoofbeats to the next crown change where maintenance has recently raised the road. If fog steals distance, you listen for water, then pace edges till you find the culvert mouth and the ditch resumes its whisper. If a storm has scoured the surface, you red wheel ruts as a voting record. Where most carts dared, you can, too. And if you must choose between 2 equally likely ways at a fork, the courier's rule of thumb applies. Choose the better drainage, because the post travels where wheels survive. A smidge of cheek to keep you honest. Your great modern hack, detour through the scenic route, is called being late out here. Pretty is for pilgrims. Couriers are paid in minutes. You'll stop to admire the view when the letter's delivered and your knees forget your name. Mid-morning edges towards the hour when sunburn begins thinking about you. The mare slides into a dependable canter along a stretch the locals still call the Rego, the straight. Hedge tight, ditch clear, camber crisp, a boon to schedules. Birds lift, insects thread the verge with sound, and a bee crosses your path with work to do and no time to explain. Insects hum, you taste dust and a little iron. The leather of the bit smells faintly sweet where the mare has chewed it into an autobiography. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Near noon, a low tower on a hill shoulder shows a square of kiln lime white, a waysite, part chapel, part landmark, that ties the route together. Someone new to refresh the lime. Visibility is a public kindness. Below it the road fords a stream on stone sets, the crown still proud above the flow. You lean back, give the mare her head, and listen to the hollow drum of water under rock. Stream hush on the far bank. An elder tree holds a rag or 2 knotted for luck. Pilgrims' voices caught in cloth. You are in system country now. The town ahead eats post like bread. A gatehouse straddles the road. A guard glances at the tally on your token and waves you through with a grunt that translates to your lateness is not my problem. Inside, the grid tilts you toward the market square where a messenger's bench sits under a lean-to. You dismount where dozens have dismounted. You pass the satchel across a table that has learned the weight of secrets. A stamp thumps. A seal is plucked. A boy vanishes with a letter as if pulled by an invisible string. Delivered. What did the road teach today? That navigation can be a calendar you wear on your body. The stages taught your hands when to loosen rein. The ditch told your eye where maintenance lies. The bell told your ear how the town keeps time. The relay yard showed your nose the difference between going and arriving. It's more than paving. It's a culture of punctuality laid stone by stone. 2 breaths to cool the animal and collect yourself. In the stable's sweet hay and the fungal shadow of damp wood. Out. The clean mineral of water fresh pumped to a trough. Bucket slosh. The mare drops her head and rubs her cheek on your sleeve with a proprietary sigh. You apologize for every decision you made this morning, and she ignores you with dignity. A last, small laugh. Heroes get ballots, couriers get blisters, and the world's news on time. If you ever need to find your way again in a country of straight intentions, remember the post's equation. Miles become minutes when the road is allowed to be a clock. Tonight's value is safety in the dark. How to keep direction, pace, and confidence when the sun has stepped off the stage. Moonlight, milestones, waysites, and the humble art of deciding not to press on. Congratulations, You've just woken under a hedge at the edge of the road in the year 1325, where the night smells of fennel and damp lime wash. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, we travel by borrowed light. The sky is a deep blue-black bowl. A shy moon is tipping out just enough silver to polish the road's crown. A breeze threads the barley with the softest hiss. From a distant farm, a hinge complains once and thinks better of it. Night insects. The first rule of night work is to let your eyes arrive before your feet. Sit a minute, count 10 slow breaths, and let your pupils widen. The road reveals itself by temperament rather than detail. The crown a paler brush stroke, the verges oily dark, the ditch a long absence of stars. When you do stand, your soles confirm the map. Tight joints at the center, a muted rummel under the heel where stones are loose. A shy slither at the verge where dew has made the grass a poor friend. Your torch stays hooded and low. Pointed ahead, it creates a wall of brightness. Held down by your knee, it sculpts relief in the surface. That small difference is the distance between stable footing and where did that rut come from? Milestones are night's tutors. In daylight, they announce themselves like officials. After sunset, they are ghosts that consent to be seen from the side. White lichen catches moonlight. A chiseled edge takes a faint glint. Sometimes the face has been lime-washed by a pious hand, turning the old measurements into little lanterns of intention. If you brush them with your fingertips, you feel the edited world. Emperors sanded into weather, distances smoothed by touch. The figures won't read under a moon, but the intervals will. A Roman mile in your legs feels like 1,000 easy counts, 200 calm breaths, 6 songs with no chorus. The body is an accurate machine when the sky has the pen. Sound is your second map. Water is louder at night. It makes a blacker patch eye. Abel's, a mill race, has a fussy, purposeful clatter that tells you civilization is near even if the miller is asleep. Stream hush. Bells are rarer but more informative. Compline long since finished. The next will be matins. And if you have the luck to hear a watchman's clapper, you're within 200 paces of a gate. Dogs give you a social contour. The first bark marks the edge of someone's care. The second, from farther in, suggests a yard. The third, old and authoritative, says don't push your luck and you'll do nicely. Waysites are chosen for night as much as for day. A chapel with lime-washed walls blinks on the hillside. A single cypress becomes an upright shadow that pins the horizon. A pale boulder, rolled deliberately to arise, stands like a moonlit punctuation mark. Even hedges work. Where two species meet, the tones differ enough that the road feels framed rather than eaten. If the moon goes coy behind cloud, you keep to these memorized silhouettes and walk with your palms slightly angled out, reading the verge before your feet negotiate it. A snip of cheek to keep you honest. Night courage is just day impatience wearing a cloak. Pressing on at speed is exactly how ankles write memoirs. You don't need to creep, but you do need to agree with the dark about who leads. Bridges in the small hours are theaters of judgment. The approach is usually straighter than the country around it. The air cools suddenly. The sound turns hollow underfoot. You pause. If the parapet is waist-high and well bonded, you cross at the crown with your torch low and your hand trailing the stone. If the bridge is no more than low sets with the water peering up between them, you take your time, unshoulder your pride, and test each step as if it belonged to someone you liked. No one awards medals for falling off a bridge you couldn't see. When the road meets water without a bridge, the decision is more interesting than thrilling. A ford by moonlight can look like a mirror in a dark room. Beautiful, misleading. You listen first. Fast water is shallow but pushy. Slow water can hide a sullen depth. You kneel and touch. The temperature reads like ink. If you must cross, find the entry stones. Their top faces are smoothed by centuries. Their downstream edges rounded. Step diagonally upstream so the current presses you into your brace, not off it. If in doubt, don't. The Manchio ruins on the far bank will exist tomorrow. You're not running the Imperial Post tonight. The road itself helps. The camber under your boots is a tactful teacher. If it remains proud and even, the surface ahead will keep serving you. If it flattens and the ditch goes quiet, water has been sulking here, and you slow. Ruts at night are readable by sentence length. Long and parallel means habit and safety. Sudden, diagonal bites mean carts wrestling a slope. Mind your ankle, traveler. Where the line bends, the outer joints often sit prouder. Let your feet take the outside. It's counterintuitive and kinder. Pilgrim infrastructure turns into navigation once the sun goes. Wayside crosses glow faintly if someone's kept the lime. A hermit's cell leaks a thread of lamplight. Hospitals and Xenodokia sit where routes meet like soft knots in string. You smell warmth before you see it. Broth, old wood, clean straw. Oven crackle. A knock in the small hours is a request, not a demand. A hand opens. You trade coin for floor space and a bowl that thinks well of you. Road wisdom can be boiled down to one sentence. If kindness is available, take it while it's warm. Counting is the quiet engine that pulls you through the dark. Choose a pace count and marry it to your breath. 1 to 4 in, 1 to 6 out. 100 counts and you rest your shoulders. 200 and you sip. 400 and you weigh the choice to push to the next hedge. Your brain loves these tidy bargains. They turn distance into polite parcels. When cloud briefly swallows the moon, counting keeps the floor under your daydreams. Stars are icing rather than bread, but they help when the line goes diffident. Polaris is a patient tutor. If your road has been mostly north and your nose begins to learn east, you correct gently by checking the still star above the dark seam of trees. The Milky Way, called a road by cultures with better poetry than ours, swims across the zenith. If it lies like spilled flour from left shoulder to right, you smile, because that's been the case since people were clever with stones and tired after supper. A little snark, because you asked for ballast. If you're picturing yourself a heroic night runner, congratulations on the fantasy. Your knees will invoice you at breakfast. Save dash for messengers and emergencies. Tonight we are going to be good at not making the wrong sort of memory. 2 slow breaths to reset. In. Cool air and the mineral hush of stone. Out. The sweet bruised note of crushed mint under heel. Breeze and cypress. Somewhere an owl writes a short line across the hedgerow and closes the book. I'll call. When to stop is as important as how to go. 3 signals argue for patience. Fog that turns torchlight into a blindfold. Rain that thickens the verges into ankle traps. Or wind that steals sound so completely you can't place the water. Any one of those, and the road's legibility drops below comfort. You look for a hedge back with a dry undercut, for the lee side of a milestone, for a coppice edge where leaf litter raised by roots makes a dry platform. If you're close to a gate, you ask the night porter with a coin tucked under your manners. If not, you become a small camp and let the roadside become your host. Your satchel makes a pillow, your cloak makes a treaty. You're not surrendering the night, you're paying it proper respect. If you must keep moving. Pilgrim's vow, a child ill, a message timed to a bell, you adopt convoy logic. 2 or 3 together. The quietest person walks second and listens while the rest glance. The torch rotates forward, then back, then away, to preserve night sight. Every 100 counts, a soft, all well, passes down the rope of your party. The road becomes a social instrument. The night becomes a chorus that invites harmony rather than solo bravado. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Pre-dawn has its own cartography. The air thins and brightens before color remembers how. Birds begin to practice small syllables. Farm dogs grow less certain about what they were defending. Distant bell. Somewhere, a baker rakes a hearth and the crusts of yesterday mutter as the new heat wakes the brick. Your feet, which have had opinions all night, forgive you one by one. The crown gathers detail. The ditch invents a margin. Limestone takes on a pale grammar you can read without trying. What did night teach? That Roman roads were designed to be legible in low information. Crown, ditch, milestone, wayside. A syntax you can feel with your boots and your breath. After dark, navigation is less about seeing and more about knowing what will be there. Because good design is predictable, and predictable is the opposite of frightening. One last breath, then another. In yeast and wet stone at the gate's foot. Out, a thread of wood smoke and the soft steam of animals waking in a yard. The porter draws the bolt with a sound that feels like sunrise. The hinge clears its throat and opens the day. Tonight's value is patience with water. How to read a river's moods, choose a ford, trust a bridge, and bargain with a rope ferry without donating your boots to the current. Congratulations, you've just woken beside a pale ribbon of mist that turns out to be a river in the year 1325, where the road pauses to think. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the road brings you to its oldest conversation partner, moving water. It's early. The banks smell of wet willow and iron. Vapor lifts in slow curls from the surface like breath on a cold morning. A moorhen writes tidy punctuation through the reeds. Stream hush. First principle. The Romans didn't cross water by accident. They chose places where geology, gradient, and human patience got along. You can still read their preferences long after the surveyors stopped drawing salaries. The approach ramps are straight, the crown stays proud, and the ditches quietly feed into culverts that exhale into the stream with a cat's discretion. If there's a bridge, it announces itself by behavior before architecture. Footing turns certain, the air cools, sound grows hollow under your soles. Come, then step. Look at the water's grammar. Fast, glassy tongues with tiny standing ripples usually mean shallow but muscular. Darker, slow plates with an oily calm can hide sullen depths. Foam tells you the flow lines for free. White threads strand themselves where the current accelerates. Leaves stall and back eddies near the inside of bends. Cross where the river spins its effort on forward, not sideways. A small snark to keep you honest. If your grand plan relies on the river being impressed by your confidence, do write your will in pencil. Bridges first, because mercy deserves a chapter. Many Roman spans persist stubbornly, semicircular arches biting cleanly into abutments. Voussoirs, wedge stones, keyed by a firm keystone. Spandrel walls filled with lighter rubble, and upstream cutwaters. Triangular noses that teach floods to split their temper. You'll sometimes see a flood arch off to one side, set higher and drier, waiting like a spare chair for bad weather. In 1325, parapets may be patched, saints inserted where emperors once preened, but the engineering script remains. You read it with your hands, literally. As you walk the crown, trail fingers along the inner face. Well-laid stone feels continuous, like a thought without coughs. If the parapet wanders in and out like a drunk at a doorway, you slow. Rope creak far off. The safest line is nearly always dead center over the arch. That's where the thrust resolves, and the stones below are in their happiest argument. Carts prove this by carving parallel polishes in the sets. You can fit your feet into the old shine and let history balance you. Where the bridge sits low, a paved causeway across a broad shallow. You listen twice and commit once. Keep your weight over your hips, torch low if it's dark, and step as if you owed the river money but intended to pay in installments. Now fords. A Roman ford is often announced from a distance by people who've grown to like their ankles. A pale scar across the bed, a pair of worn entries where hooves have sanded stone, even a modest wayside cross set where the approach leaves the crown. You squat and look along the surface, not down. Low angle reveals the little steps and hollows. If the water shows you cobbles, that's better than silt. If it shows you opinions, you turn to options 2 and 3. A staff, hazel length to chest, is standard kit. Probe before each step. Feel for that satisfying, dull firmness that says, I'm a packed bed, not drama in a puddle. Step slightly upstream so the flow presses you into balance rather than off it, and never plant both feet without invitation. The road would rather you arrive late than as a story. Animals read rivers well. If a mule sniffs, tests, and crosses with a civil tale, good. If it plants and stares as if reading your soul, reconsider your leadership style. A strand of cheek, you can force a mule across a bad ford. You can't force a reputation to recover from watching you try. Ferries are where navigation meets negotiation. The Roman state once licensed ponterii and collected vectigal, toll. By 1325, it's a parish, abbey, or family franchise, with a logic as old as the hawser on its posts. You'll know you've found one when the road flares into a pocket backed by a shed with a door that never shuts properly, a bell on a lanyard, and a rope stretched across the stream at head height. A painted street Christopher watches from aboard, politely reminding you who specializes in cargo-labeled souls. You ring. Somewhere across the water, a man answers with a clapper, then appears with a pole and the measured gait of someone whose timetable is when the wind remembers manners. Distant bell on a post. Rope ferries, reaction ferries, are clever without boasting. The boat hangs from a traveling pulley on the hawser. The ferryman sets the hull at an angle to the current. The river does most of the work, pushing you across as if conspiratorially. You'll hear the quiet song of tension rising in the rope and the gentle thump of the hull taking little slaps from the flow. Keep weight low, feet apart, hands on the gunwale, not the mast. If you must bring a mount, load second, stand at the head, and talk nonsense in the tone that means the world is safe. Prices are posted if the scribe has been sober. Persons, beasts, a surcharge for wheels. You don't haggle with watermen like market folk. You pay for judgment and a rope that won't sulk midstream. There are signals of trust. A ferry worth your coin has a landing built up with stones so the bank doesn't collapse under cart hubs. The hawser sits in proper sockets. The boat seams have fresh pitch and the thwarts don't flex like old gossip. The ferryman will refuse you if wind and current misbehave, and that refusal is the best navigation aid in the parish. Accept it with a bow. You've just been spared an anecdote formerly known as drowning. At tidal crossings, you add the moon to your committee. Roman lines often pause short of the estuary and divert inland to a dependable bridge. Merchants and the impatient slice across causeways when tide permits. The shore smells of salt and mud. Gulls write generous opinions overhead. The path broadens into ribbed stone where weed makes everything look as if it plans comedy. Ask someone whose shoes already look sensible. Tide tables live in heads here. The safe window is almost never now when you want it to be. A small lesson in humility wrapped in sea air. Reading hazards is its own calm sport. Fish weirs, low fences of stakes in AV, steel current where you least expect it, don't step between their teeth. Fallen trees generate deceptive stillness upstream and little whirlpools where the branches sulk. After storms, look for scoured holes beside piers where the water has worried away at the bed. A V of fast rilling on the surface marks the start, a deeper tone in the water the story's middle. Bridges talk. If you listen, low water days give you the cluck of little tongues under the arch. Spates speak in a roar with a honeyed edge. The alarming one is the heavy thud of a log kissing masonry. That's a signal for admire from over here. Here and there you'll find remnants of older crossings. Lines of stepping stones tall as a man's shin, set just so a cart could straddle and feet could pass dry. They are lovely in drawings and mean in rain. Roman since replaced them with arches where traffic warranted and with corduroy or compacted causeway where it did not. If you must use them, keep your toes over the upstream edge and your pride downstream. If you slip, you get wet and learn a useful sermon about patience. Pay attention to what flanks crossings. A chapel or hermitage perched at one end often marks a good bridge, so do ends with yards that open onto the road at right angles. Through traffic expected, fodder near water, a smith close by to rescue hub and shoe. Graffiti on parapets, names, dates, little ships, tell you the crossing has been kind enough to engender nostalgia rather than grief. A lime-washed milestone or sippus on the approach is more than history. It's a promise that someone claimed responsibility for this exact transition between land and not land. Bargaining for priority is a social art that keeps ankles unbroken. Carts ascending have the right of sulk. Mules do better than oxen at backing. Pedestrians are agile, but not disposable. On narrow bridges, one party takes the parapet side and becomes stone for a moment. The other passes with a murmured thanks and no elbows. The language here is eye contact, hat tilt, and the economy of shared risk. A scrap of cheek. If you attempt to race a cart onto a single arch bridge because you fancy yourself quick, prepare to star in a fable about foolishness and wetness. 2 soft breaths to settle the crossing you've just earned. In the mineral chill that lives in cut stone. Out. Willow and wet leather and a thread of pitch. Or knock on a thwart. A kingfisher flashes and is gone. A baker somewhere upriver cracks a crust that answers like brittle glass. Oven crackle. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What does water teach about navigation? That a road is only as reliable as its interruptions are civil. The Romans civilized interruptions. They lifted the crown, managed edges, made the bed behave, and when they could not command, they negotiated, bridges were since permitted, fords where the bed agreed, ferries where the river demanded a vote. In 1325 you still travel within that etiquette. You're not conquering a river, you're persuading it to be practical for a minute. Last notes for arriving dry. If in doubt, walk the bank 10 minutes. The right crossing often reveals itself by small consistencies, depth that doesn't change its mind, entries polished by generations, a rope looped over a piling that looks used, not picturesque. If the ferryman says tomorrow, he means when survival becomes probable. If the bridge looks better from a distance, that's distance doing its favorite trick. Go close, be kind to your ankles, and accept that the road's famous straightness sometimes includes a graceful pause. A final quiet. The river resumes its permanent errand, as if your crossing were a polite cough during a long speech. The road climbs the far bank and finds its crown again, shrugging water from its shoulders. You step lighter because you've kept your feet and your temper, and because coercing a river would have been a silly idea. Tonight's value is altitude sense. How to keep a line where the land grows bold, reading passes, trusting cuttings, letting cairns, beacons, and the very shape of clouds steer your day. Congratulations, you've just woken on the lee side of a ridge in the year 1325 with the wind combing the grass flat and a thin sun deciding whether to be helpful. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, your feet take the high road where Roman intention met stone head-on and persuaded it to behave. Morning begins with clean sound, a sheep bell far below counting the valley's slow heartbeat, a raven's dry comment from a crag, the small silk rush of wind through oat grass. Sheep bell, raven croak. The air smells of cold rock and bruised time. When the sun clears a bank of cloud, the stones blink as if waking too. A pale track lifts towards a saddle between two shoulders of hill, confident without hurrying. The Romans liked saddles, lowest notch across a ridge, where weather is tolerable and gradient forgives. They improved them with cuttings, sliced benches where the slope was rude, and with retaining walls whose dry joints sip water and refuse drama. If you were craving a scenic ordeal, do pace yourself. The road intends a view without the melodrama. 2 calm breaths. In, cool mineral and a thread of resin from a juniper. Out, warm dust beginning to think about midday. Wind over grass. The line you follow is older than the milestone beside it, WH. Read like a prayer you don't mind repeating. Where the hill steepens, the surface widens to let carts tack. Those deliberate zigs and zags that change angle more than height. The outer edge carries a low, dry wall built of flat stones bedded like books. Behind them, the hillside leans and agrees not to slide into your day. You test the joints with your palm. They're tight, cool, and faintly damp. Water seeps through the wall's heart and comes out civilized, a thread into the ditch. The Romans taught hills to breathe. Navigation here uses shape. You aim for the saddle, not the summit. Where 2 valleys lean together like friends whispering, there's your pass. Cloud helps. Banks of vapor hurry through gateways. On a day like this, they sketch an arrow, white on blue, hurrying from one watershed to the next. If cloud drapes a summit and leaves the notch clear, you keep your line. If fog pools in the saddle like milk, you wait, or you contour. Hold your height and circle until the wind explains itself. A small snark to stay honest. If you insist on marching up the highest bit just to feel brave, you'll earn a fine view of your own mistakes. Cuttings speak a readable grammar. On the uphill side, the rock face is tooled into planes. Tool marks run like comb lines. Rain furrows lighter where water drips. On the downhill side, the tipped spoil has been tamed by turf, and a lip of stone defines the edge with the exact pride of a tailor's hem. When snow comes, that hem saves lives. It keeps sledges and carts within the sentence the road is trying to say. Even in September, you can feel winter's rehearsal. Wind faster, shade colder, the ditch whispering under its breath. Waysites become bolder at height. Cairns, simple piles of stones, stand where the line might seem to wander on open fell. Some are Roman in spirit if not in date. others are shepherd sensible. Each eye-height cairn wears the wind in the same way. Lichens lean away from the weather that scours most, a greenish beard thinning on the side that takes the salt of storms. You add a flat stone to the top, the old, polite habit, and the cairn becomes very slightly more itself. On long ridges, these cairns stage the day in equal acts. You can drift and still arrive. Where traffic once needed speed, beacons crown the line. Specula, little watch heaps where a post could see and be seen. In 1325, their parish beacons more than imperial alarms, but the logic is identical. A high, white-plastered post or low tower on a knuckle of hill, lime refreshed after each winter, visible in every season. If the air is bright, they steer the eye. If the dark arrives early, a basket of pitch can turn one into a sentence of flame. You don't light them tonight. You just let them arrange your confidence. Your road is a necklace. Beacons are the bright beads. Wind is a tutor with a blunt style. From the north it arrives lean and factual. From the sea it brings salt and friendliness and mischief with cloud. You feel it quartering across the path and let it decide which shoulder grows warm. If the wind rises sharp and the sky stacks flat gray plates to windward, the pass will sulk. Rain in stair rods. Visibility in bitter spoonfuls. The rule is simple. If cloud drags its belly on the heather and the ravens fly low as if reading, you go down a little and take the contrapath. Romans did. Their stone took curves when judgment voted aye. Here's a causeway section. The azure raised like a low brow above a marshy kernel underfoot the statumen foundation. Big stones, lies like calmed rubble. Above, the rootus and nucleus lift the surface proud, then sets finish the job. Side drains run quick and secret, their inlets protected by slabs set on edge like a row of teeth. You can hear water chuckle and dismiss itself under your step. Stream hush, it's not pomp, it's housekeeping. And housekeeping is what keeps travelers thinking kindly of engineers they've never met. A bell rises from the little chapel that tends the pass, the sound flattened by wind into a silver ribbon. Distant bell, the building is lime-washed, roof pinned with stone, a wall of windbreak like a shrug around it. Pilgrims once touched fingers to a carved hand on a milestone here. Go well. And the habit lingers in locals without the Latin. Inside, a bench, a shelf of candles, a woman pouring hot broth into earthenware as if heat were a sacrament. Oven crackle, subtle, these are navigational aids too. Warmth at the high point, kindness at the exact mile where the day likes to wobble. Wildlife edits your choices. Sheep have little patience for fantasy. Where they've laid a narrow path along the safe contour, you step into their solution. Goats pretend to demonstrate alternative routes. You decline politely. Ravens congregate above thermals and cliffs. You avoid both unless you're fond of sudden news. If a kestrel hovers in the pass mouth for too long, wind there is up to something. Kestrels are good weather vanes in miniature coats. On certain ridges the Romans set rough flagstones on the bias to shed frost and gain grip. Their edges red like fingerprints, rounded where hooves lingered, crisp where traffic was scarce. Where the road pinches to a cart's width between rock and air, a parapet rises to belt height, not showy, just enough to convince nerves to stop writing poetry. If you must pass a cart there, the one descending gives way. Uphill momentum is dearer than your impatience. Eyes meet, hats tilt, wheels creep. A space as wide as a cloak somehow becomes enough. Clouds are maps when parchment is wishful thinking. Look for lenses, smooth, almond shapes stacked above a summit. Lenticular clouds mean a steady wind and probable lee-side turbulence. That is, nasty surprises on the downwind slope. In such company, you keep to windward, where the air is blunt but honest. When cumulus builds small towers before noon, the pass may throw a shower early. If the sky is a high blue dome with a few sheep of vapor, you're granted an afternoon of simple decisions. You don't predict, you read and agree. A ribbon of cart ruts appears on a softer section, twin shines cut into bedrock. At height, ruts are waymarks as much as wear. Wheels chose the only smart line, and next wheels consented. Where ruts split, choose the pair that keep the crown. The ones that fall toward the verge are a diary of wet days and poor judgment. A very modest snark. If you prefer to make your own path, the hill doesn't mind. It keeps the invoice book dry. Midday light grows buttery. On the far slope, larch and beech gather into shawls, and the track finds its own shadow. A switchback drops you in measured spools. At each turning, a retaining wall shows who carried the day against gravity, water bars. Shallow diagonal rills across the surface, steel runoff, and slip it into the ditch like confessions delivered quietly. You step, the stone answers, and the idea of falling all the way to evening seems suddenly silly. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. At a call where three paths meet, a stone post wears three faces. The oldest bears a ghost of Latin, the next a cross and a hand, the newest shallow cuts that mean villages you've not yet seen. Someone has tucked sprigs of juniper into a crack. You take a pull from your flask, taste metal and mint, and listen. Wind maps the branching. One path hums, one almost silent. One carries the far percussion of a hammer on iron. Hammer means a smithy. Smithy means people. People means bread. The road's advice is plain. You pass the stub of a Roman watchtower, its platform now a shepherd's lookout. In fine weather it was a relay of eyes. In cloud it was a refuge. Messages once ran by signal or by sprinting boy. In this century, they travel by gossip and bell and the will to meet on market days. The infrastructure is quietly alive. It asks you to pay attention and pays you back with less worry. Late afternoon, and the pass begins to spill into a green basin striped with terraces. The road relaxes and grows domestic. Hedges, a cart-wide bridge over a beck talking to its own stones, the first roof smoke curling from a hillside farm. Stream hush, night insects beginning low in the grass. A dog barks twice and then remembers your type from last spring. At the down valley end of the ridgeway, an inn sits with its back to the wind, a yard that catches sun, a trough under eaves, a beam for hanging tack. Bread is cooling on a sill. The crust ticks as it takes the room's temperature. Oven crackle. What does height teach about navigation? That straightness is a negotiation with relief, not a dare. Passes, cuttings, retaining walls, cairns, beacons. Each is a way of making intention visible when the land is doing its best to change the subject. Cloud shapes and wind tell the near future if you listen. And the Roman trick remains the kindest. Write a readable line. Keep it draining. Mark it where doubt breeds, and travelers will arrive with breath to thank you. 2 breaths before you step down into the basin. In the honeyed note of warm straw and a faint tang of smithy smoke. Out. Cool stone shade pooled under the eaves and the small, promising scent of stew. The ridge lifts its shoulders to the sky. You tip your hat and let the day go soft. Tonight's value is practical calm. How a road stays a road. Ditches, drains, hedges, tolls, and the quiet economy of hands that turn maintenance into navigation. Congratulations, you've just woken to the soft fizz of yesterday's rain, leaving the stones in the year 1325, where a road's heartbeat is the sound of water going elsewhere. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the road is a small town's longest workshop, and everyone has a part. Dawn lays a silver wash across the crown, droplets bead in the joints like patient punctuation. At the verge, a pair of ditchers work in mirrored strokes. Mattock, lift, twist, lay, sending wet turf up and sideways so the side drain regains its profile. Their rhythm is unhurried and exact. Each shallow slice rediscovers a geometry the Romans taught the land, and the land keeps forgetting. The ditch itself is a sentence with 2 adjectives: clean, continuous. When you walk later today, you'll read that clarity without thinking. Stream hush. A bell leans out of the chapel porch and counts the hour in soft metal. Distant bell, the note folds neatly into the day's jobs. On a plank near the gate, the road warden chalks a narrow list. North culvert mouth, clear, hedge by the ford, cut, broken water bar, reset, toll board, wash, and re-blacken. He fingers the string of wooden tokens he'll issue at the turnpike and listens to the ditch as if it were a patient. A snip of cheek. If you're tempted to stride into the newly cut channel to test it, he'll measure you from hat to boots and use one word: why. That somehow contains your full biography. Everything you smell this morning is a maintenance note. Freshly split hazel from the hedge layers, billhooks whispering, stakes sharpened to a neat pencil, pleachers bent and woven so the hedge becomes a living fence that won't lean into the road. Warm pitch from the smithy where a wheelwright kisses fellies together, then sips the join with a brush so rain will think twice. Lime from a small kiln, its little white breath rising behind a coppice. The powder destined for mortar repairs along a culvert and for a quick swipe on milestone faces so they behave like small moons at dusk. Oven crackle from a baker just opening his door. A tidy road is constantly undoing yesterday. Water decides it's clever, ditches decide otherwise. The rule the ditchers teach you is child simple and empire strong. Water down, wheels up. If the ditch has a V profile that shines a little, if its inlets are not choked, if the culvert mouth shows unblocked dark, the road will drain with a cat's manners. Quietly, completely, as if it had invented dryness. You learn to spot the good news at a glance. Cut grass lying on the bank, not in the channel. Little wicker silt traps fresh tied. A spill stone at the culvert mouth set back, so it doesn't bounce the flow onto the verge. Reading maintenance is reading tomorrow's comfort. At the ford the hedgers pause for bread. A boy with twine on his belt sets short fascines, bundles of brush, against a soft patch, then stamps in a scallop of crushed stone to bind them. It's not heroics, it's housekeeping. The crown will keep its proud line because 20 small acts stacked into one intention. You step across, and under your sole the surface gives back only the sound of summum dorsum behaving itself. No squelch, no sigh, just a flat, modest yes. The toll gate is a lesson in jurisdiction you can smell and hear. A bar of seasoned oak rests in an iron shoe. A board announces the small prices of passage, beast, wheel, burden, neatly rewritten every time rain exfoliates the letters. The warden's tokens are lead for permanence or wood for cheapness. You finger the stamp, a little emblem that says, "We keep this part tidy." Not all tolls are upright, of course, but a well-run gate is a navigation aid. Fresh gravel beyond the bar, ditches cut to a consistent depth, the gentle rise and fall of a crown that's not tired. These are the visible return on your coin. If the gate is muddy and the board can't be read, the road beyond usually writes its candid review under your knees. A small, merciful snark. Anyone who claims a road just looks after itself has never met February. Work songs and tools compose a map of their own. Where you hear iron on stone, tap, pause, tap. You're near a culvert repair, where the sound is shush and slap. A cartwright's leather apron is shining a wheel with tallow. Where it's a whisk against wood, hedges are learning posture. A wagon stands with its hub off. The smith heaves the glowing band with tongs while the wheelwright and his apprentice lower the rim into the iron's center and quench with a hiss that smells like pennies and rain. The gauge, distance between ruts, remains true. Tomorrow's ruts won't wander into ankle traps because a man with blackened hands decided accuracy is a public kindness. Beside the bridge, the culvert mouths are brushed with lime wash in a half-moon shape. A trick from long ago that makes the water's exits visible even on gray afternoons. The spandrels are tight. The cutwaters show fresh scrubbing where a spring flood rubbed them with froth. Someone has built a little wing wall upstream to steer the current's shoulder away from the approach. 2 courses of stone dry-laid with a confidence you feel rather than admire. Up top, cart-worn sets have been turned. The old shine swapped to the center so rims will meet purchase. Turnstones are a road's version of washing its face. The economy of it all hides in plain speech. Farmers keep the length outside their acres because they use it. Guilds subscribe to seasonal repairs because carts bring custom. Monasteries send lay brothers with spades because pilgrims arrive soaked when drains sulk. The town levies pontage or pavage, bridge money, paving money, for a season, then stops when the work is done, or says it will. The result for you is navigational. A stretch with fresh ditching and trimmed verge means we care. Proceed. A run grown woolly with grass and mystery says find a better route if rain is thinking about you. You can choose prudence by reading where coin and effort have recently held hands. Milestones and boundary stones collaborate with the ledger. Many carry 2 faces now, the ghost of Latin on one side, a cross and initials on the other. At the county line, a taller stone wears a notch and a nail, rope height for a temporary chain when floods make the bridge blush. The verge widens for a few paces and shows the marks of turned carts. Even the trees along this reach talk maintenance. Pollard willows with clean heads for basketry. Oaks lifted so wagons can pass without combing their loads. It's all one thought. Keep the corridor legible, keep it dry, keep it fair. A cart rumbles by and the driver salutes the ditchers with 2 fingers from the brim, which, translated, means, "You are the reason my household sees flour." The ditchers respond with the nod of men who know their worth and also the price of bread. You take their cue. If you want to navigate kindly, you make a habit of greeting the people who keep your tomorrow from being an anecdote. There are tiny signs that a warden has done a walkthrough at first light. Stepping stones at the crossing have been checked and reset to a knuckle's width. The water bars across a steep bit lie neat and catch the first trickles. A lump of chalk has refreshed a faint arrow at a fork where 2 ways seem equally plausible. None of this is grand. All of it is better than grand because it is daily. Season forces the script to change its hand. Spring works are ditch and hedge. Summer is rut and dust, tar and pitch. Little men's to sets that lift in heat. Autumn is culvert mouth clearing and tree work. Winter is keep the crown proud and pray. Travelers read this calendar unconsciously. A hedge newly laid means livestock will keep to field and not road. A ditch freshly cut means rain will travel to the beck rather than to your socks. A pile of spalls on the verge means a patch coming up. Step around without the theatrical leap your pride suggests. A baker opens his door with the grace of a priest. The first loaves tick as the crust makes its little treaties with air. Oven crackle. The inn-yard sweeps out dust with a willow broom. A girl tosses water at the curb to damp it down before the first cart raises the day. The road drinks and says nothing. The camber you felt underfoot yesterday still feels like a good decision. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. By late morning, a small crew is lifting and relaying a short panel of paving where springs have pushed. The supervisor uses a stretched cord to refine the line. A lad kneels to bed the rootus, the rubble layer, with a wooden beetle, thock, until it sits as one intention. Finer nucleus follows, then the sets keyed tight, each one a little please that the next rain understands. You watch for a minute and realize, navigation is being made right here, stone by stone, because the easiest footfall tomorrow will be the one that needs the least thinking. You leave the work behind and the road goes a little quiet. No hammer, no billhook, only the mature hush of a design performing its age. Night insects begin, low in the verge. The ditch murmurs because someone gave it a voice. The crown sheds water because someone took a mattock to last year's bad habits. The milestone catches light because a hand with lime remembered your night. This is the opposite of glamour and the true heart of reliable travel. What does maintenance teach? That a road's legibility is renewed, not assumed. Ditch, drain, hedge, culvert, crown, each is part of a habit of care that makes direction feel obvious and safe. You don't just follow stones, you follow effort. Where effort is fresh, you go lighter. 2 slow breaths before you step on. In, wet earth clean as a new thought, and a thread of pitch from the wheelwright's yard. Out, crushed mint from the verge, and the warm promise of bread. The warden lifts the bar with a neat click. The road inclines its head and invites you forward. Tonight's value is simple comfort. What to wear and what to carry so the road feels shorter. Boots, food, water, little tools, and how a balanced load turns your body into a quiet, reliable map. Congratulations, you've just cord, and the optimism of bread still warm in cloth. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the kid on your blanket will decide how kindly the next 10 miles behave. Begin at the ground. Boots first, always. The pair on offer are plain ankle boots, welt-stitched, with a scattering of hobnails set in a horseshoe on the heel and a shy cluster under the ball. They smell of tallow and oak bark. You run your thumb along the seam. It's tight as a good thought. Woolen hose fold over the top. A thin linen footcloth waits to wick sweat before it becomes argument. Lay snug, not heroic. The leather will swell as the day warms. Sparrow thread. The right boot squeaks once in greeting, then decides to be discreet. A snip of cheek to keep us honest. If you fancy breaking in new boots on a long day, you're not adventurous. You're writing a complaint to your future self. Saws tell a traveler's fortune. If the hobnails are set in tidy rows and the center kept plain, the road will hold you without clatter. If the whole soul is armed like a hedgehog, you'll skate on stone and discover new vocabulary on descents. Roman cavalry had open work and iron underfoot for soldiers. Your civilian boots prefer silence. A slim ring of nails to bite timber bridge and greasy clay. Plain leather for the tight joints of the summum dorsum. You step onto the crown and feel the faint grit under heel. Morning's dew teased into dust by sun. The road replies with a polite firmness. Now water. A gourd bottle sits beside a small leather costrel. The costrel wins. Flat sides ride close against the ribs. The bung leashes to its neck, so fields can't keep it. You fill it at the town fountain. Let the first run rinse the night from the trough. Then drink until your shoulders lower by a finger's breadth. The rest you save. The body is a tidy barrel if you treat it kindly. A sip each mile, a longer drink at the second bell. Fountain trickle. Food is not fancy, it's a punctual friend. Half a loaf wrapped in cloth to keep the crust civil. A thumb of cheese that smells mildly of resolve. A handful of dried figs. A pinch of salt in a twist of paper. A sprig of mint because it makes water taste of shade. If you've olives, keep them in a little pot and pretend you're rich. If not, bread dipped in diluted wine will persuade the morning to behave. Carry your noon in reach. Pouch, not pack, so hunger doesn't require a meeting. Clothing layers decide whether you spend more time thinking about weather than wayfinding. Linen shirt next the skin. A woolen tunic that remembers the sheep it came from. A half cloak for shoulder and shade. Pinned on the right, so your walking arm swings free. A hood folds small and becomes a pillow later. Gloves of thin leather because thorns have nothing to prove. If cloud stacks on the windward hills, the cloak comes forward. If the sun goes bossy, the hood becomes a tent for your neck. The grammar is add, not martyr. Tools, small and few. A clasp knife with a blade you trust. A palm awl and 2 needles tucked into a cork. A darning thread the color of dust. A whetstone that has already decided which side is finer. A flint and steel in a little bag with tinder that isn't a rumor. Tie a loop of cord to the whetstone and you'll stop leaving it in streams. A wax tablet and stylus for place names, distances, and the gossip that becomes navigation. Bridge mended. Willow felled. In changed hands but stew unchanged. A tiny vial of vinegar for blisters and stubborn gossip on cuts. All of it goes into a satchel that rides high and calm, not thumping kidneys like a drum unhappy with the tune. Weight is a sentence. You decide where to put the commas. Heavy things against the spine, light things towards the flap. Left, right balance so your hips don't compose a complaint. If your pouch rides at your hip, swap sides every 2 miles. Your gait will thank you by being less interpretive. A staff, not a ceremony but ash cut to your height. Turns descents into choices and streams into less of a surprise. Ferrules of iron ruin bridges. Leave the tip plain and the stones will trust you. A small, kind snark. If you insist on a pack as wide as your opinions, the verges will edit both. Feet again, because roads are democrats. If one part fails, the rest must listen. Before you start, rub a little tallow into the heel cup and ball to reduce the day's friction to a civilized discussion. Lace to the comfortable notch. Never chase a tight spot into numbness. At the first long halt, let feet see daylight. Pinch blisters while they are still daydreams. Dust with mint or chalk. Your nose will tell you when you've delayed this sermon too long. Breeze and cypress. Paces kit. A mile is not a number, it's a rhythm. 200 steady breaths. A sip, 2 sips, a fig. At the second bell, sit where shade invents itself and let your legs remember they're attached to a person. If you carry a little string with 4 knots, slide one along each time you complete a Roman mile. At day's end, your hand will know more about geography than any painted board. Distant bell, where does money live? Flat in a belt wallet, small coins uppermost, because wayfinding is faster when you don't empty your net worth onto the toll board. Keep a separate token pouch for ferry and gate. Hands that handle ropes handle change with dignity. If you're offered a friend's purse to carry because you're already going that way, say yes only if it buys you a hot bowl at the day's end and the friend's gratitude in durable coin. Little comforts that become navigation aids. A scrap of lime soap to rinse road from wrists and face. Your eyes interpret stones better when the salt is not arguing with them. A square of linen for shade. Another for courtesy when bread is broken in company. A scrap of wax thread to lash a sandal if a strap decides to become a story. A pinch of goose fat and beeswax. Boot salve, hand kindness, hinge remedy. The road repays such pettiness with fewer large opinions. If rain fancies you, the cloak becomes a tent for shoulders and pack. Stand with your back to a hedge so the drip line misses your heels. Turn your hood to the wind and let the rest of you be boring. Water loves drama. You decline the invitation. When the shower has told its story and moved on, the crown will be safe long before the verge remembers how to be useful. Read the ditch. It will tell you when to trust the middle again. Stream hush. How does Kit become a map? Like this. When your bottle sits where your hand finds it without looking, you drink before your thoughts scatter. When your bread comes out at the bell, your legs keep a metronome the milestones agree with. When your cloak lives under the flap's lip, you wear shade when the road offers none. When your whetstone knows its cord, your knife is keen before rope becomes an anecdote. Each small ease means your eyes and ears are free to notice the real directions. Where water goes, where carts chose, where lime shines in a niche. A scrap of cheek, measured. If you need 7 charms to find a town gate, what you needed was breakfast and better socks. The satchel closes with a sound that expresses readiness. Leather creak. You lift it and let it sit on your shoulders. The weight settles like a well-made sentence. Subject balanced, verb sure, object modest. Your hips find their forward opinion. The road takes this as consent. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Midday, and the bread releases its quiet perfume when unwrapped. Oven crackle, memory soft. A bee investigates and is politely refused. You lean against a milestone whose lime still remembers last week's brush. The stone is cool through the cloth and instructs your spine on posture. A dog ambles by, reads your sandwich, and decides you are respectable. The ditch whispers the chapter where water leaves you alone. Night insects begin, low in the verge. Afternoon finds you in the rhythm you packed for. Steps align with breath. Eyes count waysides without trying. A small cordon of comforts means the world is legible at a glance. You left just enough space in the satchel for chance. A pair from a wayside card, a scrap of chalk direction on a board, a kindness to carry to the next door. That space is navigation too. The road respects travelers who don't pack their days so tightly nothing kind can fit. What does the kit teach? That the best pathfinding tool is a body that isn't writing protests. Boots that consent, water that answers, food that remembers ovens, tools that behave. These make the road speak clearly. You will forget your satchel 10 times today because it's doing its job. You will remember your feet only to thank them when the town bell finds you on time. 2 slow breaths before we shoulder on. In, cool stone where your back met the milestone, and the faint herb of mint from your fingers. Out, warm dust sweetening as the sun lowers and the leather's tame creak. The strap settles. The crown lifts. The next mile introduces itself without fuss. Tonight's value is foresight, how reading goods, wheels, and animals lets you predict the shape of the road ahead, where it narrows, where it widens, where it climbs, and where it buys lunch for itself. Congratulations, you've just woken to the small thunder of hooves in the year 1325 beside a road that thinks in cargo. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, we travel with traders, carts, mules, sacks, casks, and a calendar tied to bells. Morning lifts a cool light over the crown. Dew beads in the rut polish like quicksilver. A pair of wagons wait by a hedge where the verge flares to a lay-by darker than the grass around it. The air has a soft stew of smells. Tallow, wet rope, old wheat, tired leather. A mule shakes its harness. Rings answer in a brief, bright jingle and forget themselves. Sparrow thread. If you want to know the road's mood, look at the loads. Grain sacks slumped like sleeping dogs mean gentle gradients and predictable drainage ahead. Cooper's casks, wine, oil, beer, prefer honest bridges and fords without tricks. Timber on a wagon is a confession that the next descent has a drag patch where hubs burn quietly. Look for a smear of black on the stone where the shoe, a curved iron skid, was chained under a wheel to turn rolling into sliding. If you catch a faint scorched tang on a still morning, you're approaching a hill that taught humility last week. Carts tell truths in their bones. The slow, square plostrum, broad, with solid wheels and a loyal creak, likes firmness and width. It avoids swamp and argument. The lighter carouse, spoked wheels, quicker step, takes kinder curves and smiles at causeways. Stand by a lay-by and count gauges. Wheel-to-wheel distance will rhyme across vehicles because ruts enforce a standard. Deviations get corrected by paying. Tight, clean ruts on sets up the next rise predict maintained crown and ditches. Ruts that wander toward the verge forecast a farmer's shortcut blooming into regret. Pack trains are the road's quieter arithmetic. Strings of mules, muliones and their charges, flow along with the dignified sway of creatures that think of their ankles first. Bales of cloth ride high and dry. Sacks of salt wear an extra wrapping because everything else wants to lick them. Sacks of woad or madder stain their sacking like maps. A row of tinkling crotali, small bells, marks a well-run train. In fog, the bells stitch one beast to the next so no animal has to invent philosophy. Where pack trains predominate, expect narrower lanes with verges trimmed high, stepping stones generous, bridges with parapets just stout enough to reassure. Pack work wants frequency more than spectacle. A small, friendly snark, if you stand mid-road as if rehearsing a statue of traveler considering choices. A mule will move you 2 feet to the left without entering into correspondence. Freight sets the day's timetable. Grain likes dawn starts and shade at noon. Fish, barreled or alive in wellboats, arrives before bells that smell of frying. Timber goes out after rain when dust hides splinters and returns before dusk when the drag shoes don't shriek at neighbors. If you keep an ear on bells, you'll hear the market's heartbeat. One before sunrise, bakers. One at opening, weighers. One at noon, arguments. One at close, sweeping. Distant bell, listen to wheels. Iron rim on stone speaks in vowels. A clean ring, ring. On the crown says tight joints and good weight distribution. A flatter rum, rum. Hints at loose sets or laid gravel. Your ankles will prefer caution. Wooden hubs whisper when tallow is fresh, complain when it is not. The smithy's anvil somewhere in town answers in bright syllables, shapes, shoes, hoops, and tells you which street will be briefly unpassable for a very good reason. Hammer paying far. Watch how loads behave at forks. Wine and oil keep to the better bridged line. Cloth chooses the route within's known for lockable rooms. Salt rides the salter's road where tolls are lower, but gates are more numerous. When a convoy of donkey panniers peels toward a valley with terraced vines, you can bet on a soft descent and a market that talks in liters and taste. Follow timber and you'll find soppets, charcoal clamps, and a hill that offers opinions. Follow clay-laden carts and expect a kiln's breath at the next hamlet. Warm, chalky air that catches the back of the throat and promises pots, tiles, and a roof-honest future. 2 easy breaths to set your pace among them. In warm rope and the green breath of crushed nettle on the verge. Out, a thread of yeast from an open door and tallow settling after the early harnessing. Breeze and cypress. Market towns arrange themselves for freight like theaters for actors. The main street widens near the square so carts can turn without tearing their own tails. Curbstones are chamfered where hubs kiss them. Stone staddle blocks lift grain sacks high against damp and rats. A public waybeam stands under a lean-to with a scribe and a set of lead weights that could be used to settle small disputes by peaceful gravity. Look for standard measures carved into a bench by the Guildhall. A yard in stone, a bushel hollow in oak, so strangers don't argue longer than supper. Navigation becomes easy when scale is public. Guild signs are wayfinding in a different dialect. A 3-fish shield whispers, fishmongers, ice this way in winter. A bunch of grapes painted above a door says, Coopers and Tavern, casks in the lane behind. A pair of shears 10 times life size means Fullers and Tailors, cloth toward the river for washing. You can walk through a town by reading its hung nouns. The road feeds each craft the way water threads a mill race. In return, each craft keeps a stretch legible. Sweep the stones, mind the ditch, keep the turning circle honest. It's a civic choreography. You pass, they profit, the road stays itself. How do traders choose one Roman line over another when the map gives options? Gradient, drainage, and the trustworthiness of the next bed for the body. Wool to a far fare will take the line with more mansions become inns and fewer ferries. Live beasts take grassed verges and lanes broad enough to stampede politely. Pottery prefers firm crowns and shorter bridges in case someone gets clumsy. If you see a new patch of lime wash on a parapet and a wheelwright's yard busy near the gate, that's a town preparing for a fair. The road will be temporarily kinder by sheer force of civic pride. A muleteer shares the rules that matter while checking a girth with 2 fingers and a short prayer. Leave room for a turn, he says. Greet the roadkeepers by name, and don't make the dog choose between your shin and its duty. He points with his chin. See the dust ahead? That's barley, not wool. Barley sits smaller in sacks and throws a lighter cloud. So the hill isn't bad. If it were timber, you'd smell resin and hear men practicing regret. You inhale obediently and catch a faint, clean cereal. Lesson learned with a smile you didn't plan. Freight is also sound at the edge of hearing. A slosh inside a cask on a poor crown becomes a metronome for the day's mistakes. A rill of grain escaping from a careless stitch makes a miserlier sound every 50 paces. Chain on a drag, shoe hums a note that thickens on steeper ground. Your ear begins to place these in a mental atlas. Slosh, bridge soon. Hiss, approach to a toll. Hum, long, careful descent. Stream hush. Tolls and gates pinch and release, and freight shows where. Good gates create pockets for overtaking. Lay-bys with troughs and a bench under lime trees. The shade cut to a consistency known locally as kindness. Bad gates turn the road into a commentary, and the commentary is loud. If you find 2 gate lanes, one wide with shallow angle for carts, one narrow and nimble for packed trains, remember it for tomorrow. Choice is navigation. A morsel of cheek to keep the balance. If you try to walk against a packed train in a narrow cutting because it's only a minute, you'll become geography. Specifically, the interesting lump everyone steps around. Fairs are freight's feasts and navigation's fireworks. A charter pins a date to the town. Bells call from impossibly early. The road spends the morning turning into an avenue of arrival. Temporary stalls sprout along the decumanous under canvas. A reeve posts rules under a board. No selling outside the bounds. Weights inspected at noon. Fines in coin, not goats. The square smells of pepper and vinegar and new cloth, which is to say, money made audible. You do not need a guidebook. Follow the shouting to find bowls, the singing to find drink, the measured talk to find coin. You will leave by a different gate simply because the road invited you into a story that ends somewhere practical. Watch the empties in the afternoon. They are reverse compasses. Empty casks wobble toward the river. Empty panniers head for the clothier. Wagons with their drag shoes tied high like garters point to flatter ground ahead. Trader gossip. Bridge plank replaced. Ford sulking, in changed hands, is navigational gold. Write 2 words on your wax tablet, and you've bought yourself an easier mile tomorrow than any saint could be bothered to arrange. 2 breaths, slow, to sit with it all. In the warm dust of a market square, learning the names of spices. Out, the cool damp under the tilt of a cart, where a dog dreams uncomplicated dreams. Night insects begin low in the grass at the verge. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Late day softens the road. Shadows lengthen. Wheels quiet as tallow melts where it ought. You fall in behind a packed train for an hour because their pace is kind to knees and thoughts. The muleteer whistles the same 4 notes for corners and a different pair for stops. You begin to place them as punctuation. At a rise, the wind lifts a clean resin note. You remember the muleteer's warning and step wide as a timber cart grinds down with the dignity of someone who paid for the hill in advance. What did traders teach the road? And you? That traffic is a forecast. Loads predict gradients. Smells predict surfaces. Sounds predict hazards. Read freight and you'll read the next mile in languages older than the milestones. Roads are more than paving because they organize promise. The promise that a sack will be a coin by dusk, that a cask will be emptied by laughter, that your feet will meet. Oi! In yeast as a bakehouse opens its door for the second batch, iron cooling at a smithy's threshold. Out! Rope and sun-warmed leather, and the thin mint of crushed verge. The bell finds the hour with a voice that has counted more markets than kings. Distant bell, the road nods, satisfied with its commerce and your progress. Tonight's value is calm courage. How roads stay safe enough to be worth walking. Watchman and ward, beacons and bells, letters of safe conduct, and the ordinary rules that let strangers share a line without inventing trouble. Congratulations, you've just woken beneath a town gate in the year 1325, where dew has silvered the hinges and a porter's yawn sounds like a small prayer. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, listen to the architecture go about its duty. The timber of the gatehouse smells of pitch and old rain. The first bell picks the hour out of the morning like a careful fruit. Distant bell, a watchman crosses the threshold with a clapper, two boards that kiss with a hollow talk-talk, and asks the road a simple question. All well. The road answers by being itself. Safety on a Roman-boned road is not one thing. It is many small agreements. The first is visibility. The approach to the gate is straight for a bowshot, hedges laid low, ditch clean, crown proud. Trouble dislikes being seen. A lime-wash cross on the boundary stone catches the pale light. A gallows on a rise beyond the fields, a simple beam, usually empty, answers with theater. We have rules here. You don't need to approve, you only need to read. Inside the gate, a sergeant posts the day's orders on a board. Market hours, cart lane left before noon, watch turns for the night, tolls exact and not imaginative. A reeve seal presses the wax like a thumb calming a crease. The language is local but legible. We will have a day without fuss, helped by being ordinary. A snip of cheek. If you hope to play outlaw before breakfast, the clerk's eyebrows alone could return you to honest work. You step out with the first traffic. A mule train shakes a soft music from its bells. A boy leads a cow with the dignity of an invitation. A baker's lad carries a tray and smells of yeast and charcoal. Oven crackle, faint. Everyone is armed the way decent folk are armed. With eyes, with gossip, with the willingness to shout if a hand strays to a wrong purse. Hue and cry is not drama. It's a public service. One shout picked up by 3, by 10, by the far door that never quite latches. The rule is simple. If you hear the cry, you draw near. If you see the trouble, you point with your whole arm and your whole honesty. Outside the walls, the road wears a second kind of law, ward. Villages hold the ward of their length. Ditch kept, hedge cut, stones turned where they loosen, and a watch set at dusk when the sky decides on color. The watchman's kit is sensible. A cudgel, a horn, a torch hooded against his own night sight, a patience that could grade flour. He knows the shapes of regulars, the carrier with the slow cart and sad dog, the pilgrim with the scalloped badge, polite as bread, the peddler who overpraises his own knives. He also knows the shape of nerves. Nerves walk too fast and look too hard at gateways. He follows at a human distance and lets the road straightness do most of the work. Letters help. A monk's safe conduct, 2 seals on a stitched fold, makes a porter's hand light on the bar and a watchman's gaze warmer. Guild tokens serve the same purpose. A wood disc stamped with a cooper's sign, a leaden tally with a fish, a scrap of tin cut into a key. They say, this person is expected. The expectation is 60% of safety. Bandits prefer the mathematics of surprise. Documents ruin their timing. Beacons and bells are the long nerves. On the ridge, the white post you noticed yesterday is more than wayside. It is specula, a beacon, and below it sits a bin of pitch and a neatly thatched cover. Fire is the message of last resort. In calmer times, sound does the work. A bell speaks different languages. Mass, market, meeting, mischief. Watchmen know the measures. 3 short strokes and a pause on a weekday afternoon. Lost animals or a child in a ditch. A long peel out of season. Fire or armed men behaving like boys. If you're traveling, you read bells like milestones, notes that shorten worry by telling you where people are ready. A footpath joins from the left at a bad angle and then corrects itself. The parish fixed it last winter, moving the junction to a clear place by a wayside cross. The cross stands in modest lime, a niche below it for a lamp on saints' days. At its base the grass is short from knees. It is piety, yes, but also traffic engineering. Light where lines meet, a bit of moral furniture that tells nerves to behave. You pass and touch the cold stone with your fingers, and the road feels less like an argument. 2 breaths. In, damp nettle and the iron note of a far horseshoe on stone. Out, warm rope and the thin sugar of a bakery's first tray cooling on a sill. Sparrow thread. Bandits. Then, because you're thinking it. The road doesn't pretend. There are places where the ditch runs too close to a copse, where a cutting bends and the parapet hides more than it reassures. The rule is older than brick, delay or company. You wait for a cart or two and go through together. No bravado, no bargain for speed. Talk is your shield. Names exchanged, destinations named, ordinary life laid out like bread on a board. Thieves like silence. It lets them be the only voice. If a stranger in a hood suggests a shorter way through the willows, the correct response is to admire the willows and continue on the line the Romans paid for. If trouble does arrive, rustle, demand, a shape at the verge, you step 3 little things. Show your palms so nobody's wrists get ideas. Say something boring. We're for the mill. We're late for the toll. Keep to the crown, never to the ditch, where footing writes poetry you didn't mean to compose. A fragment of cheek to keep you awake. Arguing property rights with a footpad is a fine path to becoming a parable. Coins and pride weigh different amounts. Choose the lighter loss. Most days, though, law is logistics. The turnpike up ahead, fresh board, precise prices, has 2 lanes. Carts right, foot and pack left. The bar lifted by a man who recites amounts in a voice that has never hurried. He has a book. Names and tokens go in. Disputes come out smaller than they went in. Beyond the bar the ditch is trimmed, the culvert mouths are chalked like smiles, and the crown steps neatly over yesterday's rain. That is the social contract rendered in gravel. Look for the patrol where the road enters a heath. 2 men on rough geldings, leather jerkins, cudgels and short spears, a horn each. Not knights, not showy. Parish levy, town money, abbot's contribution, a braid of authority. They prefer to be boring and visible. They ride, they nod, they teach by being seen. They also know the rumors, which coppice shelters asleep, which inn's landlord has the right sort of memory, when the fare brings more purses than patience. If they suggest you wait a half hour for company through the gorse, you accept the gift of their experience. Sanctuary is navigation too. A leper house on the outskirts, clean swept, strict about alms, sits with its door half open and a bell on a cord. If the road story turns ugly, that threshold is a hinge between violence and manner. Churches along trunk lines keep frithstals, carved seats that promise a breathing space, while tempers cool and clerks sharpen quills. No miracle required, just time, witnesses, and room for better choices to arrive on foot. Gossip is the road's newspaper. A wheelwright mentions a cutpurse tried his luck at the last fair and got a bath in the horse trough, and a warning branded into his pride. A reeve swears a troop of gentry went hunting for boar and came back with an apology to the miller. A peddler says the ferry has a new rope and a new price, both a little stiff. You copy 2 words to your wax tablet and save an hour tomorrow you won't even know you saved. Night brings the watch and ward into full voice. The town imposes curfew. The bell tells fire to go to sleep under iron lids, shutters to kiss their lintels, pots to stop being ambitious. Distant bell. Outside, the parish watch takes the line between the 2 willows and the split rock. They carry a horn, a lump of stale bread, and the authority of everyone who wants to sleep. Torches are kept low, voices lower. The road listens. If a light moves in the cutting that has no right to move, the watch stand where footing is sure and call once, twice, long enough for a foolish boy to decide to become a sensible one. 2 breaths to settle the dusk. In wood smoke and the last warmth gathered by stone. Out, crushed mint at the verge and the clean damp where the ditch settles to its evening work. Night insects. What have laws written? You won't read the assizes and statutes. You will feel them. Weights checked at the waybeam so arguments don't grow knives. View of frank pledge in the spring, so tithings remember they answer for one another. Pontage levied for a bridge, so no one drowns for want of wood. The paperwork boils down to kindness you can step on, a plank sound, a post upright, a price known before the hand asks for it. A last small bit of cheek. If you mistake hospitality for weakness, the road has a quiet, durable way of explaining you are wrong, starting with the porter's bar, continuing with the Reeves seal, concluding with a magistrate who can read without moving his lips. Better to be boring and welcome. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Midnight on the line. The moon lifts. The beacons sleep. The bell keeps the town breathing in even numbers. Somewhere a fox writes a soft paragraph across the verge and edits nothing. I'll call. Far a watchman taps his clapper once for luck. The road lies straight as a promise and as modest. You sleep because other people chose to be visible, audible, and predictable. That is what law feels like under boots. What did today teach? That safety is not an absence. It is a presence of eyes, of routine, of shared expectation. The Romans started the habit by making trouble visible. The centuries kept it by making care regular. Watch and ward, bell and beacon, seal and token. They turn a line of stone into a corridor of trust. 2 breaths before the bar lifts at dawn. In the mineral hush of the gates arch out. Warm yeast from a door just opening and the shy sweetness of dew leaving the crown. The porter smiles with only half his mouth and raises the beam. The day agrees to be possible. Tonight's value is legibility. How to read what the road writes. Milestones, abbreviations, numerals, and place names. So words and numbers steer your feet even when your eyes are tired. Congratulations, you've just woken to dew brightening a pale stone cylinder at the verge in the year 1325, where the road still keeps its own notebook. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the alphabet is granite and lime, the ink is shadow, and the grammar is distance. The milestone before you is shoulder-high, its crown chipped by carts that couldn't quite mind themselves. Lichen has softened the corners. A thumb's width of last week's lime wash still clings on the face like moonlight after sunrise. Up close, the letters wake. IMP for Imperator, CS for Caesar, often followed by names long fallen asleep. PP, Pater Patri, Father of the Country, turns up like a habit. Cos marks consular pride. TRP, Tribunitia Potestas, reminds you politics once borrowed engineering to look taller. But the line you really want is the quiet one. MPX, Mil Passus Decem, 10 Roman miles. Your fingers red where your eyes squint. The chiseled groove is shallower where rain worried it, deeper where the mason sharpened his mood. Sparrow thread, snark in a teaspoon. If you plan to stand here until you've reconstructed a dynasty from half an inscription, supper will get bored without you. The number matters more than the emperor today. A Roman mile is 1,000 paces, 2 steps to a pace, taught to your legs by repetition, not lecture. Count 100 easy breaths, and the body does the translation. 10 such parcels, and the stone agrees with your lungs. Some regions add their own measures. Lughi, leagues, in Gaulish countries show up on later posts. In Italy, milestones often kept Roman stubbornness while clerks did their sums in local habit. Your feet adjudicate without asking permission. Inscriptions carry marginalia of care. Find rest, idvit, restored, and the road is telling you it had a hard year and someone adopted it. CVR, AVT, saw to it, is the verb of road keepers and magistrates who turned budget into dryness. A little carved hand sometimes points the way, all business and no poetry. If the face bears a cross lightly sketched over older letters, that's a century leaving its signature without erasing the sentence beneath. You're not just reading distance, you're reading accountability. Numbers spill beyond stone. On a toll board, 2D for 2 pence. PhD if someone's feeling fancy or the clerk likes tales on numerals. Roman numerals aren't a puzzle when you meet them daily. I, V, X, L, C, D, M, small strokes building larger intentions. Subtractive pairs, 4, 9, show up. Additive stacks, vi, insist elsewhere. Medieval hands are nothing if not cheerful about inconsistency. You learn to glance, not glare. The road's arithmetic wants pacing, not penance. In a scribe's booth by the gate, a quill scratches the day's tokens into a tidy column. Quill scratch. He writes 12 for 12 carts before noon, 7 for packed trains, a small P for pilgrims. A chalk line beside the bench gives the yard's measure, so haggles don't turn theological. Reading law becomes reading mercy. A number you can understand is a price you can plan for. Words steeple along the way in other shapes. Boundary stones, sippy, carry initials for estates or parishes. Some are handsome, some are cripples reincarnated as gateposts. Churches and inns adopt Roman blocks into their walls. Look low in a nave or under a stable window, and you'll find a fragment. RVM where VRVM once declared of the roads, or MP sawn in half to become mere decoration. Reuse is a palimpsest, not a betrayal. The message keeps working while the stone earns a roof. Place names are the road's longest sentence, written across countries in patient syllables. Learn 3 or 4 families, and you'll navigate with your ears. Castra, camp, becomes Chester, Castor, Cester in Britain, Chester, Doncaster, Cirencester. There were troops here, there was a plan. Strata, paved way, lingers as street, strad dash, strata, estrada, strasa. Any place honest enough to call itself street or strata likely lies along a Roman intention. Colonia breeds Cologne and cousins, settlers, status, a bit of swagger. Portus gives you Porto, portsum dash, port dash. Where there is a port dash, there is water and an argument about fees. Pons, ponte, pont telegraphs a bridge without a sermon. Pontetera, pontefract, a broken bridge once, if names tell the truth after wine. Vicus leaves Wick, which, Vico, a roadside settlement growing stout on other people's miles. Sober Saxon helpmates, ford, bridge, ham, ton, clip onto Latin bones like buckles. A Stratford is a paved ford, a statement in 2 languages that the crossing isn't a dare. In Italy, the old Vai keep their names like well-polished shoes. Flaminia, Emilia, Cascia, and the modern strata often follows the same nerve. Say the name, feel the line. A mouth can be a compass needle if you let it. In Spain, calzada does similar work. In France, chaussée. In Germany, chaussée, the family resemblance is a comfort. Painted words, titularly picty, fade, but some survive in spirit. On stucco near a market lane, a pale hand points with ad thermos ghosted into it, long since repurposed to mean to the tavern that replaced the bath. A tavern sign whispers hospitium alongside its saint. It's not classical purity, but the meaning walks without limping. Hospitality inside. Prices negotiable, stew willing. Snark the size of an olive. If a sign offers the best road since Julius, smile and keep your purse where your ribs live. The road's alphabet is also furniture. Stepping stones are punctuation marks. Commas where the street wants you to cross. Curbs are firm margins. Culvert mouths are parentheses the water reads. At corners, ANSA-shaped stones, looped for hitching, serve as quotation marks for animals. If you meet a tall slate with a faint grid and scratches, you've found an itinerarium in local disguise. Distances chalked for carriers, wiped when rain edits the plan. The list is spare, from gate to mill, IJ, mill to ferry, 2, ferry to saints, I. Your day begins to feel like the tidy column you didn't know you needed. Even graffiti help. A ship scratched into a bridge parapet says someone left and wanted the stone to remember. A set of tally cuts on a milestone shows a shepherd counted weeks here. A little circle with a cross inside. Pilgrim's mark means you can ask for bread without a sermon. These marks are not art. They're breadcrumbs that don't mind the rain. 2 gentle breaths. In warm lime from a wall sunning itself by the gate. A smell like clean chalk and bakery flour. Out, a thread of damp stone where the ditch hides in shade. Distant bell. Numbers can misbehave at forks. 2 roads, 2 stones, 2 truths. One says MP7 to the big town. The other offers MPV to a smaller place with a good inn. Distance isn't the only arithmetic. Add effort and water. A 5-mile line with tidy ditches beats 7 miles of puddle plus pride. You choose with your ankles, then discover your ethics agree. Letters of passage live inside your pouch too. A merchant's carta with a seal gets you weighed without being weighed down by suspicion. A prior's note buys you a bowl at an abbey on a wet night. A reeve scribble to the next tollman saves you paying twice when the jurisdiction line runs across a bridge like a joke at your expense. The road's language is transactional, but most of its sentences say this person is expected, let them be ordinary. At noon you lean against a milestone with a face that's almost kind. The lime wash on its upper half glows softly. Someone's careful hand made it legible at dusk. Oven crackle from the town. You eat bread and cheese while reading letter ghosts out loud. And for a moment the centuries forget to argue. A child passing with a jug spells P-O-N-T-E from the parapet nearby. Proud of the way letters turn into places you can stand on. You agree with the education and wipe crumbs from your tunic as if that improved literacy. Roman numerals sneak into craft as well. On a wheelwright's chalkboard, 9 spokes for a cart that will see more bridleways than trunk road. 12 for the stout wagon that hums in its sleep. On a mason's yard, V and lambda marks for wedge direction, not numbers at all, but the eye misreads and smiles. Literacy here is partly a game of context. You don't need to know grammar if your hands know what a wall asks for. Silence is a letter in this alphabet. A blank face where a milestone should be tells you you've crossed a boundary no one has claimed in a while. Grass grows a little taller. The ditch negotiates rather than asserts. The crown loses confidence at. Sing. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Afternoon, and a clerk under a lean-to copies names into a book that thinks it's a map. From Porta Romana to Ponte Nuovo. MP3. Ponte to Mancio, San Luca. MPV. He dots his I's as if they were waysites, sands the wet ink, blows very gently, and stacks the sheets like tiles. Quill scratch. You ask a question. He points with the feather of his pen to a lime-washed cross at the fork and says only, "Follow what can be read." It is the kindest rule you'll hear all week. Place name riddles keep you alert. A borgo outside the walls is a new town where the old road paused and people stayed. A peeve hides a parish church and a decent well. Any name with Sal Dash, which, or Salini smells faintly of salt and honest money. Montemerlo, Pietra Santa, Castelfranco, hill blackened by fire, holy stone, free castle. History flickers in syllables while your feet do their unquestioning work. Read while walking and you'll arrive with more than tired calves. A last teaspoon of cheek, measured and useful. If you stride past every inscription because I don't do Latin, prepare to pay for information in blisters and detours. Stones are generous tutors. They only ask for a glance. Evening collects itself in the letters. A wayside cross gathers the day's color into its lime. The milestone nearest the gate catches the lantern's first thought and returns it as reassurance. Night insects. Lo, you have a pocket of names and numbers now. Enough to feel the road speak plainly without raising its voice. The map in your head is sentences you can walk. Cross, ford, bridge, Iron bell. The rest is spelling practice on pleasant stones. What did today's alphabet teach? That a road writes to be read at 3 speeds. Glance, shape, and crown. Look, letters and numbers. Linger, names that become routes in your mouth. The Romans began the script. Centuries added glosses. Your feet do the punctuation. When in doubt, follow what is most legible, lime, line, and the kind word on a board. 2 slow breaths before the porter lifts the bar. In cool chalk, a finger of yeast from the bakery, and the soft resin of a cart axle just greased. Out. Mint bruised by the verge, and the mineral hush under the arch. Distant bell. The letters of the town's name make a ripple across the square as someone calls them out to a child. Your bed is now a sentence you can finish. Tonight's value is seasonal craft. How to let weather steer your choices. When to start, where to put your feet, which side of a valley to favor. So the same road becomes 4 good roads instead of 1 bad surprise. Congratulations, you've just woken to a pale skim of rhyme on the crown in the year 1325. The air so clear you can hear a cart you can't yet see. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg. A quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the seasons take the lectern and speak in stone, water, heat, and breath. Summer, dust and glare, and the art of shade. Summer begins as a brightness your eyes notice before your skin agrees. Limestone joints glitter. The summum dorsum throws up a light you could almost taste. The trick is angle. Walk a hand's breadth off the center where the stones are tight, but the glare is kinder. Pull your hat brim low enough to edit noon into late morning. The verges exhale thyme and warm grass. A lark stitches a silver thread over the ditch. Sparrow thread. Dust is not just nuisance, it's news. A high, pale plume ahead means light loads and brisk wheels, surface likely firm. A darker, lower smear means grain or earth. Expect wagon ruts thickening round bends. When the wind blows across the crown, step on the windward half. Dust drifts leeward and hides stones like a bad liar. A rinse at a fountain is not vanity. Salt and eyelashes makes curbs into rumors. Fountain trickle. A spoon of cheek so you remember it. If you stride at noon because heat is character building, character will indeed be built by blisters holding a masonry class. Start early, break early. Let the afternoon be a short chapter. Summer road wisdom fits on a thumb. Shade is speed you don't pay for. Use tree lines like cloth awnings. Take the lane that tucks under a bank where roots knit the soil and the air remembers morning. If the stones ring too bright underfoot, you're walking too fast or too high on the crown. Save that edge for rain. Grease and pitch soften in heat. Bridges that take wheels happily at dawn might prefer feet at noon. Your ears will catch a new, sticky TSK as rims pass. Autumn, the first rains and the honest crown. Autumn writes and smell first. Wet leaves, cool iron, a faint peat note from fields turning toward sleep. The crown you ignored in summer now becomes doctrine. Wheels up, water down. Stay on the proud line. Let the ditch do its job without your ankles interfering. Where clay is emperor, the verges look like forgiveness until you step on them. Then they publish a sermon about humility. Read the rain's handwriting. If puddles collect with sharp edges, the bed beneath is firm. If they feather into the verge, there's softness underneath. Tread as if you like your ligaments. Watch where carts bite and lift. Their ruts are an opinion poll. If ruts begin to creep outward, maintenance lags. Step nearer the center, or, better, wait until a lull and pass with a cart for company. Stream hush. Bridges after first spates hum in a different key. The cutwaters where froth mustaches. The river shows a brown hurry with bits of field gossiping in it. Step on stone, not story. If a ford that knew your boots in summer now looks like a bottle turned on its side, use the rope ferry and pay twice if asked. Autumn charges a modest tuition and it's worth every coin. Inside towns, curbs shine a little. Stepping stones rise to usefulness. Grates talk in quick syllables as the drains remember their purpose. A baker opens his door. The oven cracks its knuckles like an old friend. Oven crackle. Eat hot. Walk slow. Count bells between showers. Distant bell. Winter. Frost. Rime. And the polite negotiation with ice. Winter is the season when straightness refuses theater and asks for consent. Rime on the crown at dawn is a warning written legibly. Tread on the sanded line where cartmen shook a bucket. Trust the ash someone spread at the ford. Thank yesterday's warden under your breath. Shaded cuttings preserve ice like a superstition. Bridges hold cold in their ribs and return it to your soles. Touch the parapet. If stone burns your palm with cold, test the next 3 steps as if you valued ankles more than anecdotes. Freeze. Thaw is the mischief maker. A noon thaw turns joints into sly lenses. A fast refreeze polishes your pride down to the bone. Travel in winter at the edges, after the sun has softened the first mile, before it abandons the last. South-facing slopes are roads with better manners. North-facing verges collect sulks. A staff becomes a conversation partner. Probe before you stride. Let the pharaoh write small essays about what lies under the white. Shoes matter now in inches, not poetry. Hobnails that felt bossy in June become grace in January. Ring their pattern down to the ball. Leave the center free for the stones to grip. On downhill sets, put your feet where hooves have kept a dullness. The shine is a liar this month. If someone has scattered straw at the inn steps, they're not untidy. They're saving strangers from slapstick. This is also the season to admire Roman drainage with religious fervor. Camber shed water yesterday. Today it saves dignity. Ditches speak in narrow, bright tones. If their voice goes quiet under a cutting, expect a glassy surprise where the path flattens. Go arm in arm where sense suggests. Two humans tied by conversation are an excellent four-legged animal. Night. No, or rarely. If you must, widen your circle. 3 together, torches hooded and rotated. Count softly. Agree to patience. The moon can be an ally on white roads, but black ice can be a genius at poor timing. Night insects. Absent. The quiet is its own map. Spring. Thaw. Spate. And the road remembering itself. Spring smells of wet bark, new nettle, and optimism. It also hides ankle traps like a prankish saint. Thaw loosens edges. Culverts wake grumpy with old leaves. Causeways sweat at their seams. Walk along the ditch for a few paces. If the inlet is snarled with reeds and winter, you slow until the warden's mattock has told a clearer story. Spades talk fast, pebbles rattling in the shallows, a whisked edge around piers, foam that can't decide which bank it likes. Ford where the water travels more than argues. Corduroy beds, the log-laid sections across soggy ground, announce themselves by a springy courtesy, step square and steady, and bless the forgotten crew that set them. The azure, raised embankment, earns its keep now. Choose the high line even if the meadow looks persuasive as a shortcut. Meadows in April are biographies of regret. Birds narrate spring routes. Swallows invent air near bridges. Wagtails stitch water edges with tails like metronomes. Where they gather, footing is usually honest. Masonry, shallow run, a human habit returned for another year. If frogs sing near a crossing, the water has widened onto the verge. Choose your stones with humor and spare socks. Seasonal micro-tricks, the quiet, useful ones. Bells as calendars. In summer, start just after lauds and nap at sext. In winter, begin after prime, end by none. Let the town's bronze tell you when roads become manners. Distant bell, valley side. Take the south-facing bank in chill weather, the north in heat. The difference is a layer of comfort you don't have to carry. Cloud reading. High thin Mara's tails. A kindly day. Flat plates stacking to windward. Past sulks coming. Choose the contour path and postpone bravado. Clothing as navigation. Cloak pinned for windward arm free. Hood up for spindrift. Wool nearest the skin. Linen to wick. Pride on a short leash. Eyes down for glare. In summer, sight 2 paces ahead. In winter, sight at your next footfall. Both reduce surprises to paperwork. Wait, deliberately. If a shower turns sets to soap, step under an eave and practice being interestingly patient. Most weather is a quarter-hour long. Your injuries would last longer. A thimble of snark, carefully measured. If your plan is ignore seasons, the seasons have a plan too. It involves anecdotes and bandages. 2 breaths, easy as the year turning. In warm yeast where a bakehouse opens for the first batch, the crust answers with tiny clicks like rain on paper. Oven crackle. Ow. The mineral thread of damp stone under shade, and a faint green of new nettle at the verge. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What do seasons teach about navigation? That the Roman straight line is a promise revised 4 times a year. Summer asks you to manage light, autumn to respect water, winter to negotiate with cold, spring to forgive mud while reading drainage like scripture. The road is more than paving because it adapts, and it invites you to adapt with it, until your feet know which month it is without asking your head. 2 slow breaths before we close the page. In. Chalk warmed by sun and the soft tarry ghost of a wheelwright's iron hoop cooling. Out. Mint bruised by your heel and the quiet burble of a ditch doing April proud. Stream hush. Tonight's value is rest you can navigate to. How hospitality itself becomes a map. Where to find a bowl, a roof, a refill, and a rumor that saves you 5 unnecessary miles. Congratulations, you've just woken outside a low doorway with a sprig of rosemary chalked above it in the year 1325, where supper scents organize the road more efficiently than any decree. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, we'll read beds and tables as signposts. The building beside you is an inn in every century but name, a yard open to the road, a trough under eaves, a door that chooses to remain ajar. Lantern light drips across the paving like honey. A girl swishes a broom and stitches dust into neat edges. From inside, the soft percussion of ladle on lip promises broth rather than heroics. Oven crackle. A mule folds its ears into comfortable positions and dreams of fewer opinions. What marks an honest inn at a glance? Yard wide enough to swing a cart without apology. Hitchstones placed where hooves don't quarrel with steps. A bench under the wall that faces evening rather than wind. The sign shows both piety and practicality. A saint for the conscience, a loaf or bunch of grapes for the stomach. Sometimes a wheel or bridge if the landlord has ambition. Inside, the floor is swept but not manic. The smoke goes somewhere. The host's first question is, how far have you come? Not how much have you brought. That order matters. It tells you the bed belongs to travelers, not to stories. 2 easy breaths. In, yeast and rosemary, and the polite coal smell of a fire finding its day. Out. Damp leather at the door and a thread of juniper from a cup rinsed clean. Sparrow thread fading to evening. The room arranges peace like furniture. Long table settles along the wall. Pegs for cloaks at human height. A jug stands where the hand reaches without thinking. The salt pig is within a bowshot of every elbow. There will be a corner where carriers' gossip collects. Toll changes, whose ditch is kept, which ford is sulking. That corner is a compass rose. Sit once, and you'll know tomorrow's safest half hour to cross the marsh. A small snark to keep you honest. If the loudest voice boasts of shortcuts, resign yourself to meeting his anecdotes in the ditch. Prices live in air as much as on boards. If the yard smells of straw turned before it sours, if the trough water is fresh, if the dog's ribs live under fur not over it, coin will be fair. Your host will weigh you for weariness and serve accordingly. Barley pottage first, then cheese, perhaps a stew that has been improved by previous evenings. Bread talks most clearly, a tight crumb, a crust that ticks as it cools, no drama when torn. Oven crackle, soft, trust follows bread. Upstairs, if there is one, is social cartography. The room nearest the stair for early risers, messengers, and those who snore with apologetic discipline. Further in, a family room with ropes for bags and a chair that thinks about being a chest. At the far end, a corner for the solemnly tired. Pilgrims and people whose day contained more water than planned. Straw is clean when it smells faintly green, not generically medieval. Bring your own linen if you can. The sheet you trust becomes part of your map of sleep. Now to the other great network, monasteries. Abbeys and priories sit a careful mile or two from town, where land goes from chatter to prayer. Their hospitality is a rule, not a hobby. Look for a low gatehouse with a porter's hatch. A bell rope frayed by more need than ceremony. Distant bell, knock with manners and a sentence. Traveler, hungry, South Road. The porter has the superpower of seeing the day in a face. He decides who needs the rearranged order and who needs soup. He will lay a board across the hatch if all beds are full and still find you bread and a place under a lean-to. Monastic space divides like this. Guests of honor to the inner lodging, pilgrims to the hospitium, the generally hopeless to the zeniticium, guest house of strangers, where the best medicine is supervision and warm broth. Monastic hospitality is navigation because it sets intervals. Abbey to abbey is a day for sensible legs. The road stiffens where lay brothers keep a length. Ditches cut neatly, culverts behaving, milestones lime-washed as if to tutor the dark. At sundown a lamp gleams in a wicket and the smell of lentils becomes surprisingly persuasive. Inside, silence is punctuated by practicalities. Sandals on stone, wooden spoons in wooden bowls, the clean rub of linen on a long table after compline. Your bed is a frame against a wall, not a sack on a floor. You sleep to the rhythm of bells and awake with ideas about timekeeping you didn't own the day before. A page turns and you're in a zeniticium by a busy junction. Part hospital, part shelter, part gossip battery. Here the road's mercy is institutional. You'll see a box of badges by the door, shells and scallops for pilgrims, tin hearts for the sick, a shelf of jugs labeled with chalk, a clerk who can write soup given, bed promised, as fast as a sparrow's foot can make marks in dust. The rules are simple. No fighting, no fire after the bell, no boasting. If you listen, you can plot 3 safer routes across the county and 1 inexpensive ferry from the stories of people who look like the road has been keeping score. A thimble of cheek. If you claim every ailment going to dodge a toll, the woman with the ledger will make you legible in ways you won't relish. What about payment? Inns expect coin or credible barter. Monasteries accept gifts, wax, grain, work, and some will refuse outright if the rule says so. Offer to mend a strap, sweep a yard, copy a page if your hand is fit for it. Payment is not just money. It's helping the next stranger arrive less worried. You'll be remembered, which is the currency with the best rate of exchange. Food is a map of the region, edited for travelers. Inland, expect barley and beans. In vine country, must and vinegar to calm a stew. Near the sea, fish salted in dreams and fried in fact. The best houses feed you something green when they can. The first radish of spring, a handful of chard, as if to remind the body that roads are not just horizontal. Listen for the quiet truce between kitchens and weather. Pots shifted when wind changes, hearths that stay low when ovens do the heavy lifting. Oven crackle. You learn to time your arrival by the bell that means the second loaf, not the first, if you like your crust friendly. Rumor is the second course. The best inns carry a climate of reliable exaggeration. The best abbeys sift for the truth and serve that too. Write what matters on your wax tablet. Turnpike move to elm. Ferry rope new. Watch rides heath at none. If your host says, sleep here, the Ford lied yesterday, sleep there. You're not yielding pride. You're buying tomorrow's knees. Water always. Honest houses keep water in the yard where hands can reach without begging. They clean the trough, not just fill it. They set a bucket where a woman with a child can lift without discovering the bucket belongs to men. In monastic houses, the laver near the refectory says everything about the day. Soap there means pest house cases are low. Vinegar added means caution. Empty means we're fetching, sit down. Fountain trickle. Night insects begin outside. That low, organized stitch in the dark that turns rooms into listening places. Night insects. Beds in true houses lie away from draft. Shutters close without complaint. A small lamp burns near the stair, not to be charming, but to prevent a stranger inventing a new staircase with his shin. If the floor creaks, it creaks consistently. Good floors grow honest. Bad floors surprise. You put your boots where memory finds them in the dark, and your purse where your ribs know it's sleeping. Hedge against nothing more alarming than dreams. A morsel of cheek. If you treat staff like furniture, don't be surprised when information sits down elsewhere. Morning is the finest signpost of all. In an inn, bread breaks early, and the host. Spades gestures with the broom. 2 miles to the bridge, the left lane is honest. The tone is not advice, it's direction in nouns. You leave lighter because nouns are better at maps than adjectives. 2 slow breaths before the bar lifts and the day begins. In the clean chalk of a scrubbed table and the soft ghost of yeast on warm wood. Out. Cool air at the threshold and the faint mint where someone washed cups in a hurry. Distant bell. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What did hospitality teach about navigation? That rest is not a stop, but a stage. Into Priory to Zenodikayam is a rhythm you can walk by. A good house reduces guesswork. It turns distances into meals, rumors into choices, strangers into companions for the tricky bit past the willows. Roads are more than paving because they come with tables laid where you need them, not where the map fancies. As you shoulder your satchel, the host nods toward the gate. Mind the ford. The ferryman's nephew is learning the rope today, which is to say, go, but go knowing what the day intends. One last breath for the road. In warm straw and the faint iron of a horseshoe cooling near the door. Out. Rosemary bruised under a heel and the mineral hush under the arch. The road waits, patient, already thinking of the next roof. Tonight's value is continuity. How devotion turns scattered shrines into corridors you can actually follow. Badges as passports, chapels as beacons, confraternities as quiet engineers. Congratulations, You've just woken at first light beside a lime-washed wayside cross in the year 1325, your cloak salted with dew and your staff leaning like a polite companion. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, you're on one of Europe's oldest habit loops, pilgrimage. The road beneath your boots was Roman. The rhythm moving upon it today is prayer braided with logistics. The morning is gentle and practical. A bell rings 2 valleys away, thin metal folded into air like silver thread. Distant bell, swallows skim the ditch with their little leather-winged whispers. Bread scent leaks from a cottage oven and edits your worries into breakfast. Oven crackle. On the cross's shaft someone has scratched a shell, a key, and a little ampulla. Santiago for west-going scallop wearers, St. Peter's keys for Rome, Beckett's tiny flask for Canterbury. If you can read this trinity, you can read your day. Pilgrim lines overlay the Roman grid like music on a staff. Where the empire insisted on straightness, devotion insists on intervals. Chapels at hill shoulders, Xenodokia at crossings, shrines that converse with bridges. The Via Francigena through Lombardy and Tuscany rides old arterials toward Rome. Westbound, the roads that will one day be called caminos already behave like obedient threads drawn to the shell. In each country, familiar signs repeat until they become a language. A scallop carved on a gatepost, a blackened Madonna above a fountain, a lime cross renewed every spring so dusk can find it. Badges are the pocket-sized version of this map. On your scrip, the little wallet at your belt, hangs a cheap tin lead token stamped with a pair of keys. St. Peter's. Light as thought, but heavy with permissions. A neighbor wears a scallop cut from horn, its ridges rubbed smooth by travel and pride. Another carries a palm fiber twist, earned down Jerusalem way, where Palmer is not a surname, but a curriculum. If you pass a river, watch how a ferryman's eyes go first to the badge. If you knock at a priory gate after dark, the porter's hand rests on the bar until the token glints. Faith. Yes, and also administration. A teaspoon of snark, measured. You don't have to swear the relic is genuine to admit the soup is hot and the bridge exists. Relics summon roads like lodestones. Rome gathers bodies and bones with imperial politeness. Peter and Paul, the later saints, tangle at the Lateran, 100 fragments that could be multiplied by piety without exhausting the faithful. Assisi's church, white as breath, holds Francis and radiates pace e bene, peace and good, into the lanes for miles. Loreto, newly famous with its translated house, experiments with being both miracle and itinerary. Far off, Santiago pulls westbound feet with a promise that feels like a compass. Even when merchandise outpaces theology, the effect on navigation is solid. Beds, bowls, bridges, and waymarks thickening along the magnetic lines. Waymarks are pilgrim punctuation. A chapel on a rise where the road nearly loses its nerve. A roofed cross at a fork. A little bridge chapel built into the parapet itself, so anyone crossing water crosses a prayer. Chapels are not decorative. They are weatherproof hints. Here is the right line. Here is where to wait if the ford sulks. Here is light if the mist invents a story. Inside, a lamp breathes steadily. Outside, the lime wash throws dusk back at itself. At night, that whiteness is kinder than any lantern you carry. Companionship is method, not mood. Pilgrims tend to clump into small companies. 2 to 6 is the sweet spot. Enough voices to borrow courage and share bread. Few enough to pass a mule train without writing a play. A paternoster cord dangles from a wrist. Beads for counting, not display. And its soft click becomes a metronome you can walk by. The talk is half devout, half practical. Next house of St. John 2 leagues. Bridge mended. Ford moved its mind. Hospitallers, those same Knights of St. John, maintain houses where the old cursus publicus planted mansions. The signs are subtle and reliable. A white cross on black cloth. A yard swept early. A bucket where your hand expects it. The Templars once rode this duty. Since their fall, the habit remains, stripped of drama and improved by routine. A stream bisects the road ahead, busy from last week's rain. The ford bears a new fascine mat. A boy in a leather apron. face serious with being trusted, checks the sets with a staff. The chapel above, just 3 walls and a roof, holds a painted St. Christopher piggybacking a child through outrageous water. It's theology of the most useful type. Cross here. Carry one another when sensibleness says so. Stream hush. You step where his painted feet suggest and arrive on the far bank with your ankles still on speaking terms with you. Documentation makes kindness legible. A letter of recommendation from your parish priest, 2 lines and a seal, travels better than any boast. Monasteries along the line keep little registers, wax first, paper when a donor is generous. The porter scratches dates and destinations with a stylus whose tip has become advice. Quill scratch. In some places a passport, as we'd name it, is too grand a word, but the practice is there. An abbot's note, a town's token, a badge that says, I set out to be ordinary and to arrive safe. It buys you lamps lit in harder weather and doors opened 1 hinge sooner. Markets sync with shrines. Feast days magnetize whole counties. Santi Pietro e Paolo at the end of June, St. Francis in October, the Lenten fairs with their vinegar-sharp air and earnest bargaining about fish. The road becomes choreography, stalls under canvas, tolls simplified, watch doubled, ditches cut a day earlier, culverts chalked, carts worn not to show off on the bridge. You can navigate a feast without a guide. Follow the smell of frying to hot things. Follow the tin clatter to knives and cups. Follow the chanting to relics and rules. If you prefer sleep to spectacle, arrive the afternoon before and tuck yourself into the monastic guest house on the far side of town. The bells will wake you into the aftermath rather than the crush. Pilgrim gossip is a map that updates itself. A woman from Lucca says the pass is kind if you hug the south slope. A man from Piacenza swears the Zenadicayam at the Long Ford has new mats and a stern old sister who refuses to let fever travel. A Breton with a shell as big as his hand reports the hospitallers near Viterbo are issuing tokens that return the favor down the line. You write the verbs on your wax tablet. Mended, moved, refused, issuing. Because verbs say more about tomorrow than adjectives ever do. 2 slow breaths. In rosemary brews from a doorway charm. Cool lime from a chapel wall. Out. Warm dust learning the day. A thin wine sour sweet with reality. Breeze and cypress. A pinch of cheek for ballast. If your plan is walk until I see a miracle, the miracle will be your knees writing you an unprintable letter. Pilgrimage is not the absence of planning. It's planning trimmed of vanity. Cairns and Mountjoys punctuate the last miles to a shrine. Little hills where the first glimpse of a holy roof pulls a soft cry from the chest. Locals have named them for generations. Montjoia, Mons Gaudii, the hill of gladness before the goal. The path up is always kinder than your impatience predicts. The path down has a bench carved by backs that chose gratitude over sprinting. Waysites multiply as you near the center. More crosses, brighter lime. A belt of chapels like beads strung around a neck. The road narrows into procession whether or not a procession is scheduled. At Rome, you read this as architecture. The long spear of a via recta aimed at an apse. Milestones hiding as columns in churches. Porticos keeping rain out of ordinary arrivals. At Assisi, the whole hill becomes ceremony. The upper church bright as a psalm. The lower one cool as a well. A friar with a broom is a better signpost than any painted board. He sees your badge, smiles with only his eyes, and points with the broom to water, bread, rest. You pay by not asking the broom to do philosophy. Relics, whether one splinter or a reliquary the size of a good story, create many of the best bridges and hospitals because altars attract guilds and guilds attract purse strings. Fratres Pontis, the Bridge Brothers, build spans where drowning has become a tradition. Confraternities of roadkeepers endow culverts and steps. A lamp fund keeps the chapel at the cutting lit through fog season. You don't need to love every claim to love the consequences. Fewer widows, fewer lost carts, fewer nights stranded at a sulking fort. Night falls. The pilgrim company settles under an eave by a chapel that keeps a lamp on a bracket. Night insects. A woman hums a hymn under her breath that knows no borders. Someone rubs a blister with vinegar and bravado. A lad recites the names on his little list of intercessors as if they were milestones. The lamp makes a small amber island. The road, which has carried emperors and couriers in carts of timber, bows its head to this island and behaves as if it were designed for it. Perhaps it was. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What did pilgrimage teach about navigation? That belief, even when untidy, is excellent at logistics. Badges convert strangers into expected guests. Chapels mark the line where doubt breeds. Confraternities turn vows into stone and lime. Bells stitch distance into rhythm. The Roman achievement was to make space predictable. The pilgrim achievement is to make kindness predictable along it. 2 breaths before sleep. In beeswax from the chapel lamp and the faint sweet of crushed mint under someone's heel. Out. Cool stone exhaling the day and the soft murmur of a fountain that promises tomorrow. Fountain trickle. Tonight's value is confidence at thresholds. How to pass from one lord's peace into another's. Tolls, coins, oaths at the gate. And how a handful of phrases and courtesies become a compass when the words change but the road remains itself. Congratulations, you've just woken where the straight white line meets paint and heraldry in the year 1325. A customs house squatting by a bridge like a cat that owns the doorway. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, we're at a frontier. The Roman bones underfoot don't care, but people do. The scene arranges itself in patient colors. A river presses on its piers with a low, persuading hush. Flags hang from a timber gallery, lions and lilies, and a bar sinister you don't need to admire to understand. Stream hush. The bridge's cutwaters split the flow like firm hands. On the near bank, a toll board is chalked in 2 languages and a variety of handwriting. A brazier ticks. A clerk warms his fingers and his arithmetic together. A bell somewhere upstream hazards an hour. Distant bell? Frontiers in this century are less walls than habits. They collect at bridges, ridgeway saddles, and town gates. Anywhere a lord can plausibly say who goes there, and a traveler can plausibly reply, an ordinary person with an ordinary day, thank you. The Roman line brings you to these thresholds with its usual quiet confidence. The approach straight, the crown proud, the ditch honest. Then the human bit begins. First, the look of a good post. A painted board that can be read, a way beam that isn't ornamental, a desk with lead seals sleeping in a bowl, a clerk who writes before he speaks. If the bar is up, he still sees you. If the bar is down, it's not personal, it's policy in wood. A small, measured snark. If you try to sidle round the bar because you know a shorter way, you're volunteering for a longer conversation conducted by cudgel. Coin is language. Bring a phrasebook. In your purse jingle pennies of several tempers. Deniers that traveled from the next county, a florin bright as a pinion, a grosso with the moon still on it. The clerk's eye weighs as honestly as his beam. Money changers keep a chalked slate. 1 florin equals XX soldi. 1 grosso equals 12 denarii. Numbers rubbed and renewed as gossip becomes rate. Don't argue arithmetic with hunger. If you must exchange, do it where the rate is written larger than the clerk's smile. Weights and measures are a second dialect. Here a libra is not that pound. There an L, ulna, ani, has grown ambitious by a palm. Grain swells or shrinks depending on whether the bushel lives in stone or oak. Look for the town's honest measures. A yard cut in granite by the guild hall. A bushel hollow bored into a bench. A rod hung by 2 chains under a lean-to. Initials and notches making promises your ankles can accept. When a reeve says, pay on the braccio, nod and ask which braccio. You'll be thanked for saving everyone time. Oaths are the hinge on which passage turns. The clerk recites in the local tongue with a handful of Latin nouns. Merces, goods, vectigal, toll, nihil celatum, nothing concealed. You place your hand where he points. On a cross, a ledger, a scrap reliquary under glass scratched cloudy by generations of nerves, and say your line. Your voice is worth more than your flourish. The oath is the toll's polite cousin. It lets the bridge keep its temper. Small papers do large work. A safe conduct, seal dangling like a moon, says you belong to someone's peace. Names travel better in wax than in boast. Merchants carry letters of marque and of credit. Pilgrims show tokens that double as introductions. Messengers display tallies cut to match in 2 parts. If you have none of these, you still have your face. A courteous bow is a coin that spends well in every mint. Language, then, and how to use it without owning it. Clergy will meet you halfway in Latin. Traders halfway in numbers. Everyone else halfway in goodwill. Useful whispers. Latin to the clerk. Iter facio ad pontum, merces nihil. Aqua. I travel to the bridge, no goods. Water? Italian to the tollman. Per la strada maestra o per il ponte nuovo? Quanto il pedaggio? By the main road or the new bridge. How much is the toll? French at the board. Par la grande chaussée ou par l'aigu? Combien pour le péage? By the high road or the ford. How much for the toll? Occitan in vine country. Per la carriera grande. Lo pont es franc? By the main road, is the bridge free? German at a gate. Zum Zoll am Steg. Wie ist die Wage? To the customs at the footbridge. Where is the waybeam? If your tongue rebels, point with the whole hand. Show the coin. Draw a tiny bridge on your wax tablet and lift your eyebrows. The road is fluent in eyebrows. Heraldry is a map with animals. 3 lilies. Expect the writing to tilt French. A black eagle. Expect a double column of rates and the clerk's Latin to be crisp. A red cross on white. Hospital or precinct. Rope ferry honest, water clean. A lion couchant staring like a magistrate. Pay exactly what the board says and keep your change neat. If you see 2 coats of arms on the same bar, you're crossing a shared bridge. The rates will include a footnote that smells of lawyers. Agree gently. Units at your feet change more than the words above them. 1 lord's mile is a Roman mil passus still loved by the stones. Another's league is whatever a horse can forgive between bells. When milestones swap MP for LEU or Luga, don't panic. Walk one of them with your breath. 10 calm hundreds in, 10 slow hundreds out, and note how far the world moved. Then write a neat conversion on your tablet and pretend you knew all along. Your ankles will do the rest. The customs house has its own music. Quill on vellum, scritch, sand, blow, numbers turning into permission. Quill scratch. A rope creaks over a pulley. A bar lifts, lowers, lifts. Someone stamps a lead seal, and the sound is small but definitive. Rope creak. The brazier releases a thread of juniper. An oven at the ferry shack cracks as the day's first bread remembers heat. Oven crackle. The scene is not theatrical. It is sedative in the best way, routine behaving like law. A thimble of cheek to keep your balance. If you attempt to pay a gabella in stories, you'll be asked for a different currency, starting with your time. Now, the body language that translates everywhere. Hands visible, hat tipped. Step to the crown when others approach, so the ditch remains free of ankles and pride. Keep your satchel's mouth closed unless asked. Keep your knife asleep in its sheath unless bread is present and a nod invites it. Repeat the important nouns, not the adjectives. Bridge, toll, water, inn. It's astonishing how much geography 4 nouns can purchase. What of crossing between tongues on the road itself, far from bars and boards? Chapel lime becomes grammar. White walls mean yes. This way continues in company. A blackened Madonna at a fork is a promise of beds. A wayside cross with fresh brush at its base says the parish still walks here. Pilgrim badges argue eloquently when your syllables fail. Show a shell, receive a finger pointed to bread in the right lane. A mule bell has the same clout. Pack trains unconsciously select the line that can be walked half asleep, borrow their choices. Money again, because boarders adore it. Some towns issue wooden tokens as change. You'll spend them back inside 2 gates, or they become souvenirs of forgetfulness. Keep small coin near. Paying a large piece for a small toll invites arithmetic that multiplies like rabbits. If there's a counter marked cambio or tramutatio, and a friar sitting by it with a ledger, accept the blessing that is written rate and stamped seal. Guesswork is a sport for afternoons, not frontiers. At some lines you'll be asked to swear you bring no salt to cheat a monopoly, no wool to dodge a clip, no iron to outfit mischief. Say the honest thing. Say it once. Let your shoulders be uninteresting. Oaths are cheaper than fines, and fines are cheaper than being remembered. 2 slow breaths while the clerk press. Suggestion of tallow from the harness by the post. Out. Mint from the verge bruised by a cartwheel. Damp stone from the bridge's shade. breeze, and cypress. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What if the language truly deserts you? You fall back on the Roman script. The road still writes: straightness for confidence, drainage for prudence, milestones for patience. You watch wheel ruts voting at the fork. You follow the ditch that was most recently persuaded into neatness. You listen for the bell that sounds like town rather than field. When in doubt, you wait for a face that looks like it expects to be asked. Then you ask with your hands and two borrowed words. People love to be maps if you don't make them regret it. A last, small snark for ballast. If you walk into a customs yard with your hat on, your voice up, and your purse open, you'll pay thrice. Once in coin, twice in dignity. Be ordinary. Orders like ordinary. The bar lifts. The clerk nods as if releasing a bird he has weighed and found exactly itself. Bar thunks up, softly. You step onto the bridge. The same stones, a different lord. And the river goes on not knowing you or him. That is the comfort. The Roman road remains a sentence that can be read in any accent provided you give it the punctuation it asks for. Pause, nod, pay, pass. What did the frontier teach? That navigation is a social craft as much as a physical one. Coins translate into passage, oaths into predictability, tiny phrases into kindness, lime and heraldry into arrows you can follow at the speed of your breath. The line is more than paving because it connects jurisdictions without asking you to become a lawyer before breakfast. 2 breaths to finish the crossing. Into clerk's sand still clinging to the ink of his last number. Out, the sweet, faint click of a crust cooling in the ferry oven on the far bank. Oven crackle. Somewhere a dog decides you are boring, which is exactly the right verdict. Tonight's value is quiet competence. How to hold a whole day's road in your head. No parchment, no spectacle, just a tidy sequence of sights, sounds, and counts that behave like a map you can hum. Congratulations, you've just woken at first light with a wax tablet, a bit of string, and more memory than you think in the year 1325. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, your pilot book is your pulse. The road begins with a breath. In, cool air that smells of lime wash and fennel. Out, warm yeast leaking from a bakehouse where the paddle has just kissed the oven lip. Oven crackle. Your fingers polish the stylus and the tablet accepts the day's outline. A short, spare itinerarium. Not a map, a list. Gate to Willow Bridge, MP2. Bridge to St. Lucas Cross, MP3. Cross to Ferryman's Elm, MPI. Elm to Town, MP4. It looks like poetry written by someone who hates adjectives and loves arriving. That's the first trick. Reduce the world to a line of verbs and nouns. Go, pass, cross, climb, turn. A line of verbs will deliver you while a line of opinions will deliver a blister. The second trick borrows from sailors. Portolan charts at sea are nets of wind lines. Assure you can keep a windrose in your mouth. Tramontana, north, tastes of stone. Greco, northeast, of sharp morning. Levant, east, is a pale coin. Sirocco, southeast, warm and faintly sulky. Ostro, south, is breath. Lebeccio, southwest, smells of weed and rain. Ponent, west, is oven door and amber light. Mistral, northwest, tidy and bracing. Speak the next leg as a wind. From the gate, walk a mile of Levant to the Willow Bridge, then a long Greco to St. Lucas Cross. You have just given your day a compass without drawing one. Count lightly. A Roman mile is 1,000 paces, 2 steps to a pace. You don't need to march like a drum. You glide your attention along the numbers and let your feet write them. To spare your head, use a cord with 10 little knots. Slide 1 knot with each 100 paces. When all knots have traveled, you've earned a rest and possibly a figure. If the cord feels too clever by half, use your breath. 100 in, 100 out, and the milestone often appears before your vanity does. Sparrow thread. Landmarks. Then, but chosen as a surveyor would choose witnesses in court, sober and unlikely to move. A whitewashed chapel on a knuckle of hill. A single cypress where hedges prefer hawthorn. A boulder set like a shoulder above a bend. a bridge parapet with a notch broad enough to be recognized by a sleepy muleteer. Avoid pretty herricks and gossiping carts. They migrate. The Roman habit helps you here. Roads use waysites on purpose. Isolated trees, bright walls, beacons fresh-limed. So a half-dreaming traveler can join the dots. Sequence is everything. Your tablet might read. Pilot for the day from Porta Romana, walk Levant to the Willow Bridge, 1,000 paces. Keep the crown to Greco until the white cross appears on the right. 1,500 paces at the cross. Take the higher fork, ditch deeper, toward Maestrale, 2,000 paces. When the road kisses stream, culvert mouth lime washed, hold the sound on your left, 500 paces. Past the cypress that looks like a bishop. Town bell audible if wind is Lebeccio. Distant bell? It's a land portaling. And it works because your senses do the measuring while the tablet reserves the remembering. You can fatten this skeleton with backstops. A large, undeniable thing beyond your intended turn so you can't overshoot in doubt. If you reach St. Lucas Cross, you've gone too far for the ford. A small snark for ballast. Relying on pure confidence is how people become anecdotes told by ditchers. Aim off is another quiet device. If you must strike a stream and then find a ford, lean your bearing a hair upstream so the water always flows down to your crossing rather than you wandering in indecision along a deceptive bank. You'll look cunning and save an argument with reeds. The sun is a slow, trustworthy clock. In summer, shadow at your left forearm means Levant has become Greco. By mid-morning it slides to your left elbow, and you are walking straight Ponent's quarrelsome cousin, Maestrale. In winter, the sun stays sulky and low. Use its reluctance to favor the south-facing side of a valley. Warmer air, kinder verges. You don't worship the sun. You include it in your itinerary the way you include water. As a colleague who likes to be asked, not ordered. Hearing is a map. Streams speak constant syllables. Mills chatter. Forges ping like small, bright arguments. Cattle bells count the shape of meadows. Stream hush. If your itinerary says, for 2 miles keep the stream on your left, listen to confirm rather than looking for it at every hedge break. Sound saves you 100 needless glances. Smell maps too. Vinegar in the air at late morning means a market practicing its salads. Tallow and warm iron announce a smithy before your eyes do. Pitch near a bridge says repairs, and perhaps a plank you shouldn't test with a wheel. A thread of wood smoke where no house is drawn on your head's plan often means a charcoal clamp and a path for timber carts. Not your road today. Edit with your nose. The method of loci, memory palace, belongs to monks and merchants, but travels well in boots. Assign each room on your imagined corridor to a real feature. Gate, a room with an arch. Willow Bridge, a room with a low roof and the hush of water. White Cross, a small chapel with a table set for one. Ferryman's Elm, a doorway flanked by 2 green columns. Town, a hall with bread on a sill. As you walk, you move from room to room. Misremember a room and your feet complain promptly. Excellent feedback device, very medieval. Your paternoster beads become a corridor counter. 1 large bead for each room, small beads for the paces between. Quiet as prayer, efficient as bookkeeping. Itineraries that survive on paper, scribbled on scraps, copied into guild books, are laconic. Yours can be kinder. Add conditions. Take higher fork if rain yesterday. Lower if wind Maestrale. Wait at cross and fog. Add people. Ask Beppo at the mill. He points with the whole arm. Add negatives. Do not follow the path with poplars. Leads to fields and polite cows. Negatives are free miles saved. Dead reckoning. The mariner's art of, we were there, we went this far on that heading, we must be here, gains a civil form on the road when you pair time to distance. From the gate to Willow Bridge, a quarter bell's worth at a walking pace, bridge to cross. 1 bell if you snack, cross to Elm. A hymn and a bit. You're not playing soldier, just teaching your day to be predictable in small, kind parcels. Error correction is the gentle twin of pride. If the landmark fails to appear when your knot string says it should, you do 3 tidy things. Slow, count 50 more paces, then stop where you can see and be seen. Scan for outliers. The cypress behind you instead of ahead. The ditch newly cleared a few paces off the crown. If the world continues to be obstinate, backtrack to the last certainty, the culvert mouth with lime, and begin again. A little cheek, Pressing on bravely is a method tested chiefly by people not responsible for soup. Navigation companions make the atlas broader. Walk 1 mile with a muleteer and steal his mental map. He will have named stones, favorite verges, and bits of ditch that talk in certain rains. Walk a mile with a pilgrim and you'll collect chapels and lamps. Walk with a carter and you'll inherit gradients and drag shoes. Bind them into one head and you'll arrive with knees and stories intact. Write neatly when you stop. Quill scratch. Your tablet develops patina, smears from rain, crumbs of wax, a nick where the stylus sulked. Tonight, by lamplight, you edit the day into cleaner lines and wipe the rest with the flat of your knife. Tomorrow's you is a stranger with your boots. Leave them a clear note. Night insects, low beyond the yard. 2 slow breaths before the last mile. In mint bruised by your heel and the faint iron of a bell far off. Out. Cool stone shadow at the verge and the sweet tiredness of leather settling on shoulders. Distant bell. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What does mapping without maps teach? That the Roman road gives you 3 gifts you can carry in your head. Straightness you can name with winds, distances you can count with breath or knots, and landmarks chosen for the lazily observant. Add sound, smell, and a short list of verbs, and you'll own a pilot book no rain can steal. A last, measured pinch of cheek. If you insist on going by feel, do make sure the feeling belongs to your feet and not your pride. The town arrives exactly when your last knot slides home. A lantern in a porch paints the milestone with tender arithmetic. The gate's arch swallows your footfalls and returns them as supper. Oven crackle. Tonight's value is recovery. How to notice you've drifted. How to get unlost without drama. Backstops, bailouts, detours that pay. And the art of arriving late, but whole. Congratulations, you've just woken with that uneasy feeling you owe the road an apology in the year 1325. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, you and the line have had a small misunderstanding. We'll mend it quietly. The morning smells of wet nettle and resigned leather. Mist lifts in folded scarves from the meadows. Somewhere an oven cracks its little fingers and turns dough into manners. Oven crackle, your path, node, not the road, has dwindled into 2 cow ideas and a puddle with ambitions. The crown is missing. The ditch has elected to be a reed bed. A lark writes cheerful lies overhead. You've drifted. The first rule of mending. Stop while your luck is cheap. Stillness costs less than bravado. 2 breaths. In cool mint bruised by your heel and the faint iron of a distant shoe on stone. Out. Damp chalk and a thread of willow. Turn slowly. Ask the land a small question. What here is Roman? Straightness? Camber? Ditch that drains instead of improvises? If none present themselves, enact the second rule. Back to the last certainty. Put a pin in your morning. The culvert with lime, the cross with rosemary, the bridge that smelt of pitch, and walk back to it like a civilized person. The distance you've strayed will shrink in your shoulders as you do. A thimble of cheek, pressing on to see what happens, is an excellent strategy for inventing new biographical footnotes under ankles. If the last certainty is uncertain too, use backstops, large, undeniable things behind your intended line. A ridge should loom where the map in your head says it will. A stream should gossip to your left. A whitewashed chapel should sit where its lime can see the road. If you keep walking and none appear, congratulations. You're walking a story, not a road. Bailouts are the road's safety nets. Keep 3 in your pocket. Follow water down, not up. Brooks collect people, people collect roads. Walk the bank until the stream meets a bridge, a ford, a mill, or a quarrel loud enough to help. Stream hush. Climb to sea, descend to use. A low knoll will show you where straightness resumes. Look for pale ribbons, lime flashes, beacons, then come down by the line that drains. Wait for the bell. Sound is a compass when sight sulks. A town bell will pull you like thread through cloth. Walk toward regular bronze, not random hammer. Distant bell? If fog is the mischief, become smaller than your problems. Keep one hand on the hedge, crownward side. Count paces to the next gap. Listen for water, cows, cart ring. Put your worst foot down last. If you reach a cutting that swallows sound, stop. Fog loves cuttings. People who insist on heroics inside them become anecdotes outside them. You're writing a lullaby, not a saga. At forks, especially the dishonest kind where both options look equally plausible and equally opinionated, read the maintenance. The better ditch nearly always marks the main line. Compare verges, trimmed and flinty versus woolly and priestly. Look for lime wash in the distance, even a thumb smudge. Look for ruts that vote together. The main road behaves like an adult. The other way behaves like Sunday after dinner. If rain is the culprit and the bed has gone to paste, shift from shortest to highest. Detours along ridge lanes add miles, but remove sliding. Camber is a sermon in wet weather. Walk where water can't marry your boots. If the crown looks tired, step onto the turned stones at a bridge approach or the bias-laid flag a cruise set in spring. Those actions were written for you months ago. Your itinerarium, that tidy list of verbs and places on wax, gets a handier cousin on bad days, a negative pilot. Write what not to do. Not the poplars, field path. Not the hollow lane in wet, clay. Not the meadow bend after the goats, boggy deceit. Negatives save courage for the places it belongs. If you must ask a human, ask one who uses the road, not one who paints it in memory. Carters speak in gradients. Muleteers in fords and fodder, shepherds in dry feet. A friar sweeping a threshold knows which pilgrims arrived wet this week. Ask for nouns, bridge, ford, gate, and for verbs. Mended, moved, closed. Adjectives will promise you romance and deliver laundry. Detours that pay are a sign of wisdom, not defeat. 3 of the best. Market detour. Swing through the market town even if it adds a mile. Fresh ditching, clean grates, swept sets, baked bread. Each removes a problem you would otherwise meet later and name unkindly. Monastic loop. Priories keep their mile like a gardener keeps a path. A slight bend to pass their gate means dry feet and a rumor about the ford. Ridge repeat. If a valley floor has started telling jokes in brown, stay up one contour and accept extra steps for fewer opinions. A morsel of cheek to keep you awake. If you insist the straight line is always the cleverest line, Winter would like to subscribe to your newsletter. Sometimes the road disappears inside a town because streets are having their private lives. Read the drainage and curbs. Follow the stepping stones. Aim for sound. Fountain for water. Forge for exit to the cart's road. Bakehouse for the lane that feeds the market. When the grid is muddled, the smell of yeast is still right more often than your instincts. Oven crackle. If you've truly come adrift, fog, rain, dark playing duet, make a small camp, not a scene. Hedge back with a dry undercut, lee of a milestone, porch of a wayside cross. Cloak high, satchel for a pillow, boots underhand. In drizzle, a little patience wins against a lot of flounder. Night insects stitch sound into the dark and make the world legible again. Night insects. Feet teach contrition faster than oratory. When the line resumes, shorten your stride for 50 paces. Check your lacing. Sip the water you were saving for triumph. Write one honest sentence on the tablet. Lost at willow break. Regained at lime wash. Patience cheaper than ankles. Quill scratch. Error correction rituals worth borrowing. The rule of 3. 1 thing goes odd. Note it. 2 slow. 3. Stop and reverse to the last certainty. The 10-count decision. At a fork, count 10 slow breaths while you read ditch, crown, lime, ruts, wind, sound. Decisions made after 10 breaths own you more gently. The kindness tax. Pay it before you need it. Greet wardens, nod to ditchers, tip the ferryman. The world likes helping the polite lost. You can also aim off deliberately to hit an obvious backstop rather than miss a subtle target. If you must find a road that kisses a stream, lean upstream by a hair. The sound will show you the ford. If you're hunting across on a ridge, drift toward a beacon. You can't miss white in weather that hides gray. A small medley of unlosing tricks. In woodland, keep the wind on the same cheek and you'll hold a rough bearing until the trees step back. In open downland, count fence lines and stiles, civilization's bead string. In marsh, step where the rushes change species. The line that supports them supports you, more often than not. In snow, read the wind scour on stones. The wind tells you where the crown persists under white. In bright heat and glare, Walk with your shadow, kissing your left boot if the bearing is broadly east, right boot if broadly west. It keeps zest out of your eyes and trouble under your heel. If a stranger suggests a quicker way through the willows, with a grin that forgot to bring eyes, use your company bailout. Fall in with a cart for a quarter mile. Road criminals prefer soloists. When your schedule is running with its tongue out, invoke the art of late but whole. Choose beds over bragging. If dusk finds you near a lamp and soup, the road expects you to sit down and continue in the morning with both ankles the same size. Tell the truth cheerfully at the gate. Off the line at the willow break. Need a bed, a bowl, and directions that assume I'm bright enough tomorrow. People admire competence. They admire humility more. Write a note for your future self. Start earlier. Breakfast more. Count properly. The tablet is kinder than memory when pride edits. 2 slow breaths to file the lesson. In willow shade, wet stone, and a far, obliging bell. Out. Straw, leather settling on a peg, and a ribbon of mint. Distant bell. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night J.'s proud again. The ditch speaks in tidy syllables. The milestone offers up a number like forgiveness. Stream hush. You didn't conquer anything. You consented to good method. The road approves. What did the drift teach? That navigation isn't a performance. It's a conversation. The Roman trick still saves you. Straightness you can test. Drainage you can trust. Waysites that behave in low information. Add backstops, bailouts, detours that pay, and the humility to trade minutes for ankles, and you arrive with your day intact, and the next one ready to be simpler. One last breath before bed. In beeswax from a chapel lamp, and the last warmth off the milestone's face. Out. The cool mineral under the gate's arch, and the soft arithmetic of a crust cracking in a nearby oven. Oven crackle. Tonight's value is timing your entrance. How to read the capital's approaches, aqueducts, gate rituals, tomb roads, river crossings. And let the golden milestone gather your journey without letting the city swallow you whole. Congratulations, you've just woken where the countryside thins into rumor and the line begins thinking in marble in the year 1325. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg, a quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, and in beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, Rome is not an address, but a gravity, and the road under your feet has been practicing this approach for 1,000 years. Dawn opens wide. The Campagna breathes a pale gold. Dew threads the grasses. A long file of arches strides the horizon, an aqueduct walking its patient geometry toward thirst. It is the city's first, grandest wayside. Follow the arches and you follow water. Follow water and you find people. Find people and the road stops being a theory. Sparrow thread. The line beneath your boots grows ceremonious. The crown holds steady. The ditch speaks in tidy syllables, and the verges betray a new habit. Fragments of carved stone under weed. Bits of cornice, a foot with no statue, a letter that used to be important. Tombs gather, too, like old courtiers along a processional. Not morbid, practical. In the old Roman mood, to be remembered you had to be seen, and to be seen you had to stand by a road that didn't lie. You pass rotundas missing their roofs, square bases growing fig saplings, little edicules keeping a niche for a saint that replaced a family name. The message to a traveler is simple and kind. You're not the first to come this way hoping to be noticed, and the road didn't raise its voice for them either. 2 gentle breaths, to pace yourself over history. In warm time and a thread of resin from a cart's axle. Out. Cold stone where the night is hiding in a culvert's throat. Stream hush. Aqueduct shadows give you bearings as sure as a compass. Walk so the arches step at your left shoulder and the city opens like a fan. Keep them at your right and you'll skirt toward quieter gates. Where 2 lines cross like sober scaffolding, expect a gate within the hour. Old walls nested inside newer walls, each with a porter whose eyebrows can read coin. Gates differ by temperament. One is market-minded, broad lane, way beam, smells of garlic and leather, the unhurried thrum of negotiation. Another is martial by memory, towers practical rather than proud, a guard who prefers names to stories, ruts polished to a veteran's shine. Choose your gate like you choose a friend for a long walk. A thimble of snark to keep you honest. If you plan to burst into Rome at a gallop because films you haven't seen yet think that's stylish, your knees are drafting a petition and the porter is sharpening his sarcasm. The tomb road teaches courtesy even before the bar. Pass wide. Keep your voice a notch lower. Let the dead keep their dignity and the living their trade. Sellers have installed themselves where memory draws custom. Olive men with the quietest voices in Italy. A woman with ribbons for pilgrim hats and a keen eye for who's likely to lose one. A copyist scratching pious verses on little boards for travelers who forgot to be literate. Quill scratch if you need directions. Pay in nouns and coin. Bridge, gate, water, inn. People are kinder when you don't make them translate your adjectives. The river appears without ceremony, a broad, brown resolve coiling through stone. Bridges here are Rome condensed, spans of many ages, cutwaters like blunt prayers, parapets with a century of elbows polished into them. Choose a crossing with a chapel married to it if the day looks like it wants to rain. Lamps arrive faster where saints collect alms. The island, squat and practical, splits the stream like a sensible cook spreads 2 loaves. Cross in 2 acts if your courage likes intermissions. Listen now. The sound stack thickens as the city rehearses its daily play. A blacksmith's ping finds a neighbor. Wheels speak vowels on sets. A bell explores an hour that means something to bakers and nothing to poets. Distant bell. Somewhere a crust answers the oven with brittle gratitude. Oven crackle. The road is still visible under the chatter. Crown proud. Joints tighter as feet multiply. Curbs brisk enough to keep sandals dry after a Saint's Day puddle. Gates require choreography. Hats tilt. Hands visible. Satchels closed unless asked. The board lists tolls in a mixture of numerals and local personality. The clerk underlines amounts with sand and patience. Offer small coin. The bridge may have already subtracted its opinion. If the lane divides, carts right, foot and pack left. Choose the left. You'll read more faces and fewer axles. The porter asks the question he was born to ask. From where to where? Answer with the sentence you have practiced. Along the Cascia, for the Forum, with no trouble. It's not poetry, it opens the hinge. Once inside, let the ancient grid whisper even where medieval streets have improvised. Find the long, confident cardo. It will tilt you toward market and administration. The decumanus will tip you toward river and commerce. Stepping stones appear where lanes remember rain. Arches tidy themselves over main runs. The air's flavor tells you districts. Vinegar and olives, food. Wet wool and soap, fullers. Ink and dust, clerks. Iron and convincing language, smiths. Read the road by trade, and you will neither wander nor hurry. Where does the Golden Milestone live in this? Not a tourist trinket, but an idea with a stone at its heart. The promise that distances can be counted from a center and that a center owes clarity in return. You will not sleep on the Miliarium Aureum, nor will you kiss it and solve your taxes. But you will walk in the direction of the Forum and feel the city pull you into the habit that made the milestone plausible. From here, we mean what we measure. In your pocket, the day's itinerary, little verbs and numbers, tightens its spine. The capital is not a riddle. It's a ledger writ large in travertine. 2 slow breaths, to keep city fever at the polite end of the spectrum. In the faint sweet of figs bruised at a barrow, a line of pitch from a cart by the curb. Out, cool marble shade where an arcade rehearses being eternal. If you fear noise, use side sight lines. Rome loves porticos, shaded corridors that run parallel to the main pulse. Walk 1 street off the thunder, read the same script at a gentler volume. Fountains are punctuation, basins worn to satin, spouts that refuse drama. Drink, turn, and the next decision arrives already civilized. Squares act as lung and compass. Step out. Let the space expand your sentence. Find the next arch. Resume. Not every stone is kind. Some streets tilt like gossip. Some crowds bristle because a chartered fare is flexing. The trick is frequency. Follow the rhythm you learned in smaller towns. Bread breaks at a certain bell. Forges ease at another. Clerks flow toward an archive, then away. Swim with that tide, and you arrive with your pockets and temper intact. Swim against it, and you will be writing a stern letter to your calves. Pilgrim infrastructure thickens without becoming precious. Chapels cluster at corners, lamps on brackets making a necklace out of alleys. A house of the Hospitallers marks a turning with a cross on black cloth. The Zenodicum near a bridge keeps its door half open and its ledger busy. The city wants you to be legible to yourself. Accept this rare urban kindness. A morsel of cheek so you remember where you are. If your plan is to ask a forum money changer for directions to the cheapest bed, he will direct you, with admirable accuracy, to his cousin, whose beds are reasonably priced and dimensioned for people half your size. Ask a baker instead. Bread has no cousin. Now, the approach to center without losing your nerves. You will likely not be greeted by eagles. You will almost certainly be greeted by a small queue of ordinary lives paying ordinary respects to ordinary officials. Perfect. Stand in this modest republic. Watch 3 transactions. Copy the most effective sentence. Use it once. Then go to the place where the city remembers having been an empire, a square that carries more past than paving, and allow one measured moment of theater. The Golden Milestone's promise is the only necessary spectacle. All roads can be measured to and from a point that means something beyond itself. That was the old thought. Your version is quieter. You have become predictable to yourself, and the city's geometry agrees. Take care of feet and exit strategy before reverie. Find the inn you intend to leave from as well as the one you sleep in. Put water in your costrell. Write tomorrow's first 2 nouns on your tablet. Gate, bridge, so the capital spell doesn't make you late enough to invent a new opinion of yourself. If you must shop, choose tools, not trophies. A better all travels. A bronze trinket complains. A loaf travels exactly as far as your patience for hunger lasts. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. Evening softens the edges. Night insects, faint in gardens. A boy chases a hoop across a strip of street and misses you by courtesy. A clerk closes his ledger as if to hush a small choir. A bell lifts the hour in bronze, so easy you forgive every cue. Distant bell. You eat within earshot of other arrivals and learn the usual miracles. The ford mended. The minor gate less fussy after none. The bridge chapel's lamp fed by a widow who finds joy in flame. You write 2 of these in your wax and let the rest remain in the air where they belong. Quill scratch. Night under a capital has its own navigation. Curfew is a braid of safety and inconvenience. Shutters kiss stone. Torches become islands. The watch learn your face by motion. Unhurried. Obvious. Your hands honest in the lamplight. Sleep is a floor above a busy sentence. The straw is clean. The beam creaks in one particular place. The door swings without surprise. You put your boots where your morning will actually find them and your satchel where you can touch it in the dark. The city exhales, you match its rhythm. What did the last miles teach? That roads are not simply things that arrive at cities. They teach cities how to be approached. Aqueducts as arrows, tombs as tutors, gates as negotiated agreements, bridges as hinges, fountains as commas, the center as a promise that distances add up to meaning. You enter Rome not by conquering pavements, but by agreeing with their language, and the Golden Milestone translates. From here, makes sense. 2 final breaths before sleep. In, cool travertine and the little sweetness of fig and yeast left on the air. Out, mint bruised under a doorway and the mineral hush of an arch that has heard more arrivals than names. The road settles under the city like a thought that decided to become stone. You have arrived without drama. You will leave without forgetting. Tonight's value is closure. How to stand at the center, gather the miles into something you can keep, and then leave a road kindly, without losing what it taught your feet, your breath, or your sleep. Congratulations, you've just woken at the edge of the Forum in the year 1325, the hour when marble still owns the cool and bread is remembering heat. Dim the lights, fan for soft background hum. Later tonight, we step into St. Petersburg. A quiet ceremony that makes a girl named Sophie into Catherine, an inn beneath a red-dusted tomb in the Maya world. For now, the city is quiet enough to hear your own map speaking back to you. Sparrow thread. The stone in front of you is simple and immodest at once. The Golden Milestone's idea embodied. From here, the world becomes legible in numbers. You touch the cold face with 2 fingertips. The chill is not unfriendly, it's exact. It reminds you of a plumb line settling, of a cord drawn taut between 2 staves, of a ditch that decided to take the rain seriously. Your breath falls into the old rhythm. In for distance, out for patience. Around you, Rome holds its breath too. Columns shading a promise, steps worn into a grammar your ankles can read. We could make a speech about empires, but the road has better manners. It prefers inventory to oratory. You let memory lay out what you actually used. Straightness, yes, but not as bravado. As language. The groma's strings saying hold. The way two lime-washed points made a sentence long enough for a day. Drainage, of course. Water down. Wheels up. Ditches shining a little. Culvert mouths dark and honest. Crowns proud as tidy thoughts. Bridges you trusted by walking the center where thrust goes home. Fords you negotiated by reading foam and stone. Ferries that accepted coin and returned you to your own side of the story. Stream hush. High lines and their tutors. Cuttings combed smooth. Retaining walls breathing water through dry joints. Beacons fresh-limed on knuckles of hill. Markets that rearranged streets around the wants of grain and cask. Wayhouses where the cursus publicus became courier's arithmetic you could feel in your thighs. Nightcraft. Milestones made pale moons by lime. Chapels as lanterns. Bells as little bronze compasses. Distant bell. Seasons. Glare taught you angles. Rain taught you crowns. Frost taught you humility. Spring taught you to distrust meadows with enthusiastic opinions. Hospitality. Tables as maps. Beds as intervals. A jug placed where a thirsty hand will find it without rhetoric. Law. Watch and ward. Beacons and bells. Oaths at gates. Safety as the presence of routine, not the absence of fear. Words and numbers. M, P, Leu, rest, itfit. Letters that put their hands on your shoulders and steered gently. And then there was everything you carried. Boots that consented to the day. Costrell that made time flow sensibly. A wax tablet that turned guesses into verbs. A cord with 10 knots that kept pride from telling jokes about distance. A staff cut to height. A knife that worked when rope behaved like theater. A habit of greeting the people who kept the crown proud and the ditch speaking. Quill scratch. You don't need to make this into marble. You just need to make it portable. The little trick is gratitude turned into method. 2 breaths to bundle the miles. In. Cool travertin. Fig and yeast from a doorway beginning to mean breakfast. Out. A thread of pitch from a cart axle and the mint that lives at the city's curb. Oven crackle. How do you leave without losing? You reverse the choreography, gently. First, you choose your gait by temperament, not convenience. Market-minded if you want voices to carry you past doubt. Riverside if you want bridges to rehearse the day for you. The quiet gate with the chapel if you want a lamp to walk you into dusk tomorrow. You ask the baker, not the money changer, to point you. Bread has better maps. Then you shorten your stride for the first mile. It is a courtesy, like bowing when leaving a room that kept you warm. You let the city's noise rub off you like dust. You keep to the crown even when vanity suggests striding the verge like a hero. Heroes slip. Travelers arrive. You write a short departing itinerary on the tablet. Verbs and nouns only. Forum to gate. MP high. Gate to Willow Bridge. MP2. Bridge to cross. MP3. You add 2 backstops a child could not miss. You include a kindness. Thank the warden if the ditch sings. Then you tuck the stylus away and let your hands be visible and boring at the toll. You pay the kindness tax in advance. 1 coin at the bridge chapel's lamp. 1 nod to the ditchers making your tomorrows less dramatic. You do not fix the world. You help it remember its better habits. A teaspoon of cheek, measured. If you intend to commemorate your Roman competence by buying a bright trinket and a heavy regret, your boots would like to lodge a protest on behalf of your shoulders. The last things to pack are senses, not objects. You pocket a long look at the aqueduct stride across the morning, a small smell of damp stone in an arcade, the precise sound of a bell caught by tiling and returned as mercy. You swallow those like medicine you won't need to remember to take. They will dissolve into your pace without effort. Distant bell? As you turn outward, the tomb road reverses its counsel. Voices thin, stones grow rural. The fragments in the verge go back to being stones, not announcements. A mule snorts once as if certifying your departure. The ditch resumes its whisper thread. The crown lifts its small, expectant eyebrow and waits for your foot. The city shrinks politely behind you. You are not less. You are simply measurable again. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. What, finally, was the point of all this stone? Not dominance. Predictability. The Romans insisted that space could be made trustworthy. Centuries added the softer insistence that trust should arrive with tables, lamps, tokens, and bells. The road was never only paving. It was an agreement. Surveyors promising clarity, ditchers promising dryness, tollmen promising fairness written down, innkeepers promising soup, chapels promising light, travelers promising to walk in ways that preserved all of the above for strangers they would never meet. You have kept your side. You walked in the crown where it was proud and stepped aside where wheels needed space. You paused where the road widened and did not speed where it narrowed. You listened for water before you saw it. You thanked lime with your eyes at dusk. You let bells turn distance into kindness. You arrived by agreeing, and now you leave by the same treaty. A small ritual to close the book. At the next milestone, sit with your back against its cool face and write 3 lines. What I misread. A willow brake you mistook for a ford. The day you learned patience faster than pride. What I will keep. 2 knots between sips. A habit of asking for nouns. The way lime makes dusk legible. Whom I owe. The ditcher's mattocks. The ferryman's refusal. The baker's second loaf. Then wipe the tablet with the flat of the knife. The knowledge isn't gone, it's gone in. Night insects, faint along garden verges. If you're staying, find it in that tastes of yeast and rosemary and sweep marks on a floor. Sleep where the stair creaks in one honest place. If you're going on, take the road's ordinary blessing. Good crown, clear ditch, steady feet. If rain, wait. If fog, hedge. If dark, light. That is the whole catechism. 2 last breaths with the milestone. In, cool stone, chalk soft, with a little warmth borrowed from your shoulder. Out, air that smells faintly of figs and dust, and the next place being possible. The sound of the fountain becomes thread again. Your pulse ties it to your pace. Fountain trickle. Now step off. The line will remember you. Porter who will forget you by supper, and keep the peace for whoever comes next. That anonymity is the road's kindness. It needs you anonymous so it can be generous. You meet the countryside as if it had just been invented. Hedges whispering, a lark rehearsing its stitched line, a causeway shouldering water with good humor. The Roman promise is everywhere underfoot, that intention can be read, that design can be kind, that miles can be turned into a story that does not exhaust the teller. When night comes, you'll stand by a wayside cross and watch lime answer the dark. You'll hear the low stitch of insects and decide that sleep is also a road, straight, well-drained, lit at intervals by bells that belong to other people who are, mercifully, keeping watch. Night insects. If this were theater, we would lower a curtain. The road is more practical. It lowers your eyelids. If this pace helps you drift, you can subscribe so the next night journey finds you. If you slept, perfect. If you stayed, thank you. I'll keep the light low for the next story.